Welcome, everybody. We do apologize. Well, me and Sandy are going to apologize for being slightly late, but Jay will be humble because it was his fault.
Yeah, because I was right on time and I was just waiting for these two.
Literally, bang on,
Kidding,
1 minute.
kidding. I am habitually late. It's a problem, but we made it. We made it.
We made it. But this is episode 3, and it's Saturday night, so we have to do Saturday Night Fever. Was the spin of the wheel to do this. Yeah. We can have some good takes on this one. I think this is going to be a polar difference, I'm guessing, on certain parts of the film, parts of the topics. But this was Sandy's pick, one of the ones, and the wheel picked it. So as I dropped Jay in it last time, Sandy, go. Why this movie?
Saturday Night Fever. As a historian, I love a film that is a slice of life. And I think this is one of those films that just completely illustrates the mid 70s. The film is actually based on a short story. I know last week I said, oh, yay, there's no book to read. It's a short story that was published in New York Magazine. Get this. Are you ready for this? The writer's name was Nick Cohen. We've gone from Cohen Brothers to Cohen Brothers.
No kidding.
To Nick Cohen, who wrote the article. No relation and spelled differently. But this film it's purely a sketch of characters, a group of friends, particularly the main character, Tony, and the day-to-day, everyday ho-hum juxtaposed against trying to get out of that ho-hum on a Saturday night by dancing. And one of the quotes of the film that I thought really kind of encapsulated the whole film is when he's sitting at the dinner table with his dad, and he tells his dad that his boss offered him a raise that day. And his dad, having lost his job, was kind of bitter over it and really didn't treat Tony very well. And Tony says, you know how many times somebody ever told me I was good in anything in my life? 2. Just 2. This raise today and dancing at the disco. That sums up pretty much the entire story for Tony. No one's ever told him he was good enough. He's living in a sort of depressed situation in Brooklyn. He's, got questionable friends, but he can dance. And when he gets out on the dance floor, he's a different person. He gets respect, or what he thinks is respect. It makes him feel good. It's the only thing in his life that gives him some fulfillment. And maybe, just maybe, it's a way out. And that's why I like the film. I love that slice of life. I like I'm not going to talk about the music yet. I like I think I've mentioned in a couple of our other conversations about how sometimes the setting can also be a quote character. And I think Brooklyn is a character in this film because of the care taken to portray the neighborhoods, the disco, the difference between being in New York and being in one of the New York boroughs, across the bridge, the haves and the have-nots, and the day-to-day struggle, even though it's a mundane struggle, to try to find a way to try to do something a little different. So that's kind of the summary of why I enjoy the film. Now, I'd seen the film several times. Jay and Stacey, how many times had you seen it? Had you seen it? Was this a first run for either of you?
For me, I'm guessing the second, because I remembered it, and then I was like, I completely have forgotten this movie. And I watched it like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was like, I don't really remember this. And then I sat back and had to watch it. But it was like, I watched it, of course, with my girlfriend, and it was she thought she watched it, and then she realized I've never watched this movie. It was completely brand new. So it was kind of seeing that perspective as well. So it was kind of interesting to see. And if I have to say, I will say, has it dated, or is it still up to standard? That would be a good one, because of the how it's shot. I like, but some other bits. I think the cinematography, I think it's great how it is actually shot, like for that
Quite
kind
gritty.
of gritty kind of like things. I think it goes well with the tone of the film. about yourself, Jay?
Jay, what do you think?
For me, this was the second time watching it, but similar to Stasis, I was actually chatting with Ben Dover in another stream earlier while we were just in the same chat, where I had mentioned, I'm like, there's a lot that I forgot about this movie. I had watched it and I thought I remembered a lot more about it, but what really stood out, I guess, in my memory was just the disco scenes themselves. So my memory of it was actually that it was a little bit brighter of a movie in terms of tone, and then rewatching it, I'm like, shit, I really forgot. I really forgot a lot about this this story, and kind of the way in which it unravels, which was a nice surprise because I think it kind of changed my. I've always liked this movie, but it kind of adjusted my opinion going through it this second time.
I think the film is overcome by the music, right? People remember the music,
Right.
and they sometimes forget the film and the story, and it's kind of a dark story.
That's why I just brought up that, because I think a lot of people remember those scenes that have probably been
Exactly.
clipped and
And I
gone
think that's
around,
what yep.
being promotional things like that, like the walk he does,
Yep,
the
the
kind of
opening scene.
even with like a couple of the dance bits, and there's a little bit, a couple other ones outside, but mostly people remember those scenes. And I it's completely, it is a very, for the time, that the gritty darkness, a lot of like kind of the, I suppose, B studios, Hollywoods were kind of doing that kind of grittiness. Like, oh, we need something a bit gritty. It was a very 70s on point movie. And it comes back at Rocky the year before. And it's like that. So it's kind of, it's on point for its era of what they were doing in Hollywood, making it a little bit darker.
And the reason I like it from a historical perspective is exactly what you said. It was filmed right after Rocky. You see the Rocky poster in his room.
Yes.
You see the Al Pacino poster. You see that Farrah Fawcett, that iconic Farrah Fawcett poster. By the way, those posters, if you can get an original on eBay, those were that one and the Bo Derek poster from the early 80s were like the hottest selling posters of all time when posters were a big thing. The music, however, again, I think overshadowed the film. I think people left the film with the music in their head and wanting to go do those dance moves. That was a thing, to do the line dance, which is called the Brooklyn Shuffle, by the way, the big line dance that is going to Night Fever, the song Night Fever by the Bee Gees. Everyone wanted to do that. Now, I was a little teeny tiny like infant when this film was out. So I obviously didn't see it when it was out. But from a historical perspective, the fact that it was filmed of its time, I don't feel that it was exaggerated in either the accents, the hair, the mannerisms, the music, obviously. I don't think it was exaggerated. I think this is a really good, portrait of late 70s New York area. It could even be New Jersey. It could be a little bit of Jersey there, kind of that New York boroughs and the New Jersey area. I'm going to do my thing and share my screen if I can find the right one. Oh, brother, always takes me
The
a second to
stats.
find the right one. I know I have too many stats for this one because,
I must say,
oh, go ahead.
I must say quickly, I went to, like, me and girlfriend watched it last night, and then we went. I never go into Morrison's, and I needed to pick something that was specific in Morrison's supermarket, and literally Night Fever came in on and I just went in. I was walking along, and I was like pointing up, and she was like, "I can't believe it." We just walked into Morrison's. It was like that. It was literally that surreal moment. You're like, really? Are they taking the piss? But yeah, it did make me laugh. Yeah,
Popular.
I kind of wanted to get the hips going as well.
You start doing the Travolta walk.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
I
on our reel
didn't have
of
the tight
film.
trousers on.
The full Monty, when they're in the unemployment line and they do the dance. I could see you doing that totally. The film was released in 1977, as I mentioned, adapted from an article. It's really a short story. It's about 14 pages long, in New York Magazine called Tribal Rights of the New Saturday Night. And the article, wow, When we talked about No Country for Old Men and we talked about lifting the dialogue, of course, from a full-size novel, this is a short article, and a lot of the dialogue comes right out of this article. Many quotes
Interesting.
are in this article. The idea behind this article, by the way, during his lifetime, Nick Cohn claimed that this was a true story when he wrote it, that the
Yeah.
names had been changed to protect the innocent. And right before he died, he admitted that it was a complete fiction. Now, I think it would have
Okay.
been even more interesting that he created it. So why wouldn't you claim that it was, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe he thought it couldn't get published if it was
Yeah,
fiction.
maybe. Yeah.
That's what I wonder. Maybe if in the time he just figured
Yeah.
saying a real story would have worked better in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, I think it works better as a fiction because it's such a great kind of it just encaptures, like you said, it encaptures that time, that era of Brooklyn, New York, that given the struggles of, families in that area trying to, like the father losing the job, him working to try to get all, it captures that struggle plus the nightlife scene, plus the disco era. I mean, it really is a great encapsulation of that time. So I think it works better as a fiction than it does a true story, to be honest.
The story became quite famous very quickly. By the way, this was published, I think, again, it was just the year before. 1976. So this was published in 76. The film was made and released in the fall of 1977. So it was shot really quickly. But the article it caught on like fire. The outset of the article talks about the difference between the 60s and disco and how disco was born. And he talks about the fact that the 70s generation detested the flower children of the 60s. And we see this, of course, in our own generations, right? My kids can't stand the millennials. And he writes in the article about this generation. They know nothing of the flower power or meditation or mind expansion. They have no water beds or Moroccan cushions, no hand-thrown pottery for them, no HEP jargon, no Pepsi revolution. We called it the Cola Wars here. In many cases, they genuinely can't remember or care about who Bob Dylan was, let alone Timothy Leary. Haight-Ashbury, Woodstock, Altamont, they don't care. They draw a blank. Instead, this generation's real roots lie further back in the 50s, the golden age of the Saturday night. So he's talking about the development of disco as more not so revolutionary music, but more
Right.
energizing, comforting music, fun music, not protest music.
Right.
The article continues and describes the characters who, Tony is Vincent in the article. It focuses on Tony, his friends, his family relationships, and Annette, who in the article is Donna. There are no good people in this article. Tony is the only person who is slightly veering towards having a moral compass. And I think it's the same in the film. I think Tony is surrounded by horrible people. These are not good people. And the only person I can find a hint, okay, let's take his little sister out of it because she
Fair
hasn't
enough.
been dated yet.
Like she has
But
2 minutes of screen time, so fair enough.
But obviously the store owner, his boss, seems like a good man.
Yeah, at heart.
Tony seems like he knows what it is to be good, but can't quite get there. But I think other than his friends, you do see evidence of him making the right decision at times. But overall, these are self-centered people. Every single person in this film is out for one person, and that's him or herself. And it doesn't make it a bad film. It makes it a real film. This could be, these people very well could exist. Just really quickly to finish out the slide, the article was adapted into a screenplay by Norman Wexler. We know it's starring John Travolta. Stephanie is Karen Lynn Gorney, and Annette is Donna Pescow, who ended up having a television career, pretty successful television and stage career afterward. I don't think we hear much from Karen Lynn Gorney, and none of the other actors of note. Some of them were stage actors. almost all of them from in and around New York and New Jersey, but none of them obviously shot to the fame that John Travolta did from this film. So let's talk about it. Tell me your thoughts. We're going to start off with him walking down the street. This is a normal day. This is my day in a life of Tony Manaro. He's walking down the street.
But he's strutting. He's strutting.
Oh,
down.
yeah.
Yeah, he's literally got that. So yeah, I think that's one of the iconic, isn't it? It's an iconic scene. It's like that. So you got that, and then you kind of phase into out. I suppose it's kind of like he's reality, and then the real reality is like that. And that's what I'm saying. Like he kind of comes across like at the beginning, like he knows what to do, but he's playing the dumb card. If that's making it's like being a bit dumb about everything. He's like, so like it's like he goes from there into it's straight into work, doesn't he? Is it straight into work?
Yes, no. So he goes. He's walking down the street, kind of doing his thing.
Yeah. Oh, he looks at the store.
Yes, no. Because he's grabbing the can of paint from the other store so that he can bring it to this one so they can sell it. So yes, he does go right to. He's in a bit of a rush.
Sees the shirt.
Right.
Sees the
he
shirt.
grabs the pizza. Sees the shirt. Sees the girl. So he's kind of like, doing his own thing in his own world, but there's that underlying like, shit, I got to get back to the, I really got to get back to the store with this can of painting. So it kind of rushes him up a little bit.
But that's it. Like it makes like how we perceive, like, I'm the guy, I'm the it, and then not belittling anybody who's done that kind of job, but like how he's showing himself, like look, I'm the man, and then he just works in like a I don't know what you call it, like a hardware store.
Hardware store.
Yeah, hardware store, like in the US. So that's it, and he's like, and he's just like he's just getting some paint, and he's like that. But you can then see the way he talks. He's very cocky. The customers like him. They kind of like that. And I think he like, how much did it cost you? $8, and he sells it like doubles it, doesn't he? And whatever. And it's just like,
I'll make a deal for you. I'm gonna make a deal for you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you $1 off this can, $10.98 just for you.
Yeah. And you even see the store owner kind of look back at him, like, because when he first hear, like, I'm gonna give you $1 off, his ears perk up, like, you're gonna do what? And then he hears the final price he gives. So he's like, gives that a little bit of approval, like, oh, nicely done. It shows that he's as much as he is cocky in that opening scene of just walking around, strutting, that kind of interaction with the store, the clothing department store owner with the shirt and all that. And then with that lady, he tries to kind of hit on. He's got this level of like you said, like, I'm the king, world revolves around me type of thing, which comes from his life of dancing. But then even when you get to him in the store and his more normal grounded life, he's still got a ton of charisma. He knows how to work the customers. He's a very personable guy in that role, in the role of, clerk or whatever you want to call it, hardware store worker. So it was interesting because he doesn't, you kind of would have thought he'd approach that mundane life with a little bit more angst and aggravation, or just like, oh God, like I just want to be dancing. But really, he seems to enjoy it in terms of like, he puts himself into it. He's got all the charisma. He's not walking around mopey or anything like that at the store. He's kind of taking that little bit of smoothness he has from the dance floor and putting it into his work as well.
And the lady that he gives the deal for, I'm going to get you a deal, is his mother in real life. That is Anne Travolta.
Oh, really? No kidding. No kidding.
Anne Travolta, the lady with the big glasses. His sister is also in the film, but she is just, I think she's just someone in the crowd at the disco. But yeah, that was an interesting, I had no idea. Just thought it was just
like little fun things like that.
Yeah. So he finishes his day, his week. He goes home. And now he's going to do his hair. I spend a lot of time on my hair. I spend a lot of time on my hair. And we see the ritual. This is the ritual. By the way, the entire film is soundtracked. There is not a quiet moment in this film. The soundtrack, we'll get into in a minute, has 17 songs. It's a 4-side album. It's a double disc set.
No kidding.
So now he's doing his hair. Can't even do it right. He's blow drying his hair. He's looking at, in the mirror behind him are those posters. He gets up, he's flexing his muscles. He wants to be like Stallone. He wants to be like Charles Bronson. There's Bruce Lee. I forgot to mention.
Yeah, Bruce Lee's
poster and Al Pacino. There's Al Pacino. Now you get the picture of his family life.
Mhm.
And in the article, he lives in a tenement on the 11th floor of a tenement apartment, and his father is in jail, not unemployed. So it's a
Interesting.
slightly more desperate situation in the article. Here, this is a lower, I wouldn't even say it's lower class. It's probably lower middle class for that time,
Mhm.
except for his father being out of work. So that's what makes times more desperate
Mhm.
because
Which
they're in a single family. Mhm.
No, sorry, I was just gonna say, I actually like the change that they made in the movie to that because his father being in prison would kinda just have him off and out of the story. I
Yeah.
think I prefer the way he has a relationship with his father because it does go to show you a little bit more like well, it makes you feel a little bit worse for Tony's situation and gives you a different kind of perspective of what he is from, that opening scene, he seems like he's gonna be this cocky guy, but then you start to peel back the layers of the onion, you realize like, damn, like you said, the scene where he's never gotten a "you've done a good job" before or only gotten it twice, just kinda makes you feel for him more. So seeing that he
Mhm.
wants his father's approval but can never get it, I think that's a nice touch that they put in there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because it kind of things out they're both like they're both are kind of losers, but they're trying
Mhm.
to undermine each other or up each other,
Mhm.
at the
Yep.
same time. And it's just like, yeah, that having that dynamic, wouldn't have worked if he was in prison away, or like if it was a
Right.
phone call. It had to be like sitting there going, "Look, I don't give a crap about you getting a," kind of like when he
Mhm.
gets the raise. It's like I
Exactly.
just think, what you think you're Billy Big Bollocks now? It's kind of like
Yeah.
that, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's literally like I don't care. It happens. But the next day you
Mhm.
might get sacked. It's kind of like that feeling you have, like that. Don't come to me. And all he wanted was like, well done, son.
Right.
Well
Just
done.
a
That was
just a
it.
simple good
That's
job.
all he wanted.
Yeah,
Right. And I
yeah,
think what I liked about their relationship too was you could tell that the father was a bit of a defeated man in terms of like obviously there's the scene where they're at the table. It might be that first table scene where they're all whacking each other.
They're all hitting
The
each
mother
other.
the mother whacks him, he hits her, he's talking about the hair and all
yeah,
that. And there's this dialogue in there from him that's just like he's more focused on the fact that the mother had just hit him or his wife had just hit him because he's like, you would have never done that before. What is this? Because I don't have a job. Like you can see all the
mm,
self-conscious kind of creeping up out of him, which shows him to be a little bit more defeated than argumentative. Because you would have honestly almost expected, especially in that era of the 70s, him to be more physical with Tony, with the way that Tony acts and things like that. And Tony kind of mouths off in ways that the father just kind of sits there and watches and lets happen versus
Mhm.
standing up and kind of, like I said, in that era, you would expect him to be a little bit more physical. Give him a whack and tell him to, get out of the house, get out of the room, don't talk to your mother that way.
yeah.
And he just kind of sits there letting these things happen and letting Tony kind of push back on him in these ways. And it just kind of shows, I think, that the father's just completely defeated at this point. He's
Mm.
lost his job. He feels like he's losing the respect of his family. He has no control over because they're all going which way or the other. We'll talk about what the brother does afterwards.
Mhm.
So yeah, I thought the father was actually a pretty interesting character in this movie, and having him be off in jail would have taken a lot out of the family dynamic, I think.
Mhm.
Mm. 'Cause I'm
You've got
guessing that this
grandma. Oh, go ahead, Stasis.
sorry, I'm guessing at this time period, like how they portrayed, I suppose, Italian Catholics in
Mhm.
movies was that kind of hard hitting father figure. They
Right.
rule the roost. But
Mhm.
the mum rules the house, and it's like
Mhm.
that. And this dynamic was shown in like a completely, I suppose, like a different setting. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
you got the down and out, your dad, and the mum's gone. No, I'm now taking over, and it's also
Right.
yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think so. I think you're right, and having grandma at the table too,
Mm. Oh, I loved
saying
Grandma.
"Manja,
I did
manja."
like.
Yeah.
I was
Just trying to
waiting to
settle it all
see.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also to have that, I hate to say, like, stereotypical Italian family dynamic with one of them speaking Italian, like, she's going
Mhm.
"Manja, manja."
Mhm.
She's speaking Italian. I
Mhm.
wonder, and I hadn't been able to find any references on this, but again, I'm gonna make a Sopranos reference. Sorry, anytime you go Italian, I'm gonna make a Sopranos reference, but the the dynamic in the flashbacks of Tony's life to his father and mother. Here, his father was the head of a mob family, but his mother crushed his soul
Mm.
because she was Livia Soprano and she just defeated him. And he was,
Mhm.
in Tony's words, at the moment he died, he had been ground down to a nub.
Mhm.
And just kind of around the table, I got that kind of little bit of a Sopranos flashback where, to your point, well, the father rules the roost only to a certain extent because
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
mothers have their children's love.
Mm.
And in the article, going back to the article, when it describes Tony. Tony, oops, take over.
Well, it's a great point you just made about the mother having the children's love, because you see it in the scene where he, not to skip too far ahead here, but after we find out, the situation with his brother, you see it in this scene where he kind of flips out on his mom and just kind of gets a little annoyed, like essentially just fed up with the picture perfect way she wants to view her kids. And he's like, no, the reality is this is your kids. These are your kids. This is what we are. You have to deal with that. He has this nice little, well, not nice little, but in terms of acting, he has this good like blowout scene fighting with her, or just really just yelling at her, kind of laying into her. And as soon as he stops, he instantly feels that regret. He goes over to hug her, say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But then you see the argument with his father over the $4 raise, and he just storms out of there like, again, essentially like, you're supposed to be the man. Well, he even makes a line in it too. He's like, when was the last time you got a raise? So like the father's just a complete afterthought. Like he's a loser to not only himself, but his family at this point, his kids, his wife, the whole deal. Versus the mother, who although he doesn't agree with her, he still has that love for her.
Yeah, I think it's like when you see like that they're kind of how the roles are in the family. They have Frank is the priest, like or like training, I suppose, whatever. But that's kind of the outside. Is everything's fine, everything looks good. We've got one kid doing, one working hard at the local store, one's doing the priesthood. We got I guess in the father lost his job. Everything looks good, and now it's being upset by him being, I'm guessing, like being made redundant or something. They don't really go into what he's. I can't remember if they say what job he
Construction.
had.
He was in
construction. That's what I thought.
Yeah, and then you have to look at him and say, well, he's also getting older, so that line of work is not going to be available for him much longer either. So that's probably, he's probably looking at that as well. So finally, he's out of the house. Oh, I have to, let's just say it specifically. So as they're all thwacking each other around the table,
the hair.
Father hits the hair. The hair. I spent a lot of time on my hair, Ma, and
he's always hitting my hair.
Yeah.
Just a great line.
It's so good.
It sounds ridiculous.
Well, because but it does go to show you the priorities of him at this point, because they're having these arguments, whatever, at the table, and he really didn't care that he was hit by his father. Like that part of it is normal. He hit me anywhere, hit me in the chest, hit me in the shoulder, doesn't matter. Don't touch the hair. That's the problem. But it just goes to show his priorities, that his time out on Saturday night is what his life is about. He doesn't, as much as he kind of goes through everything else he has to in daily life throughout the week with the job and the family and all that. It's the hair, it's the look, it's the dance, it's that Saturday night out at 2001 Odyssey is, the focal point of what his life is.
Becoming a different person, the ritual of the hair, the jewel, you see him put the jewelry on, you see the shirts, you see him look at that shirt in the first, this first scene, and he's a little, like, and you can tell in his face, because you saw him looking at the other shirt earlier, that maybe he's worn this one a few times, and he wants to look better, and I'm wearing the same shirt again. But transforming, now you get to meet the friends, and oh my gosh, as I said, there's nothing good to say about this crew at all.
No.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that they are either childhood or neighborhood, and he's never, because they've never got away. Let's say that they've never broadened their horizon, so they're very stuck together. And it's just like, even when, and like say, they're like, there's more than a couple of knobs like in that group, and you're like, it's literally, you're like, really, you want to hang around with this crowd? But like, does he do it because that's all he knows? I don't make her a friend, that's my group, we go on. And it's like they get a bit clicky, and then they just, they go to the discotheque or whatever, and literally they're just sitting down, aren't they? They've got their table. They like walk in like Tony walks in like he owns the place when you first see that, and then like when they sit down, it's the same table every time. It's like he's third for them. He's like, no, but nobody else sits there. It's it's Tony and his gang, I suppose.
It is, and they're all nothings. They're all pandering to him, because in the article it goes into the fact that the article is more focused on, really focused on Tony and Annette,
Mhm.
and also goes into her background, which you don't see in the film, but you certainly can put together that she's also coming from a lower class background and she's
Right.
got nothing and she's trying to figure out how she's going to get out. But in the article, these clubs are only hot for a short period of time.
Mm.
So for about 6 months, one club is hot. And then when the quote faces move on to the next club,
Mhm.
then they're out. So when you get the faces, the ones who can dance well, the ones who pull in a crowd, the the discos will go all out to make sure they've got the best table.
Right.
They'll go all out to make sure that their friends of the friends get in, even if they're not, up to snuff, like a
Mhm.
Bobby. Bobby is a total hanger on, but guess what? He's got the car. So they're using
Right.
him because it's not only their transportation, it's their what do we call it? Entertainment after a night at the disco. They're all using Bobby's car.
Mhm.
And we'll see a little bit about how they really treat him horrifically.
Mhm.
They don't even listen to him when he just wants to talk. But
Mm.
now you're in their territory. Their territory is the dance floor, and it's really not the rest of them. It's really only Tony. It's
Yep.
only Tony.
Yep.
Tony
And
can dance.
Well, I think they have like subtle things. Is like they get it. They get his scraps of the girls. Let's say
Right.
that if he's
Right.
like, I don't like that, yeah, then oh, we pick it
Mhm.
up because they want to be close to Tony. They don't,
Right.
but they're giving it up. And like, I hate to say this word, but they call it things like you can be a cunt a lot in
Mhm.
this, and like they say it, but that's like things is it's Tony's offshoots, I suppose, like that. Like
Mhm.
they will stick
Leftovers.
around to get leftovers,
Cast
but they
off.
say
Right.
it,
Mhm.
but they call it is
The
like you
sloppy
said.
seconds, and so they
There you
say.
go. Yeah.
Yes. How he says it
Um,
is like he's disdained by
right.
like the women. Like you had probably a chance, but before you did what you wanted to do, because
Mhm.
all you want to do was get close to me, but you slept with one of my mates. That's not going to
Right.
get you close to me.
And
And
guess what? In the article,
Mhm.
he is not angry. He is attracted to other women. By the way, there's no Stephanie in the article. That whole
Really?
storyline is not there.
Yeah.
It is
Interesting.
it's just about one or two Saturday nights with this crew of friends plus the family. And
Interesting.
so there's no Stephanie, but in the article he talks about, because the article is him talking to a quote reporter, and he talks about liking certain women, but once they dance with another guy, he doesn't want to touch them. And he literally means dance. He does not mean
Right.
sleep with them.
Mm.
He
Mhm.
means if he really likes someone, he doesn't he believes that the dancing partnership is sacred.
Mhm.
And that's part of his his morality. So yeah, his cast-offs, his whatever, who end up with his friends, he's focused on the dance.
Mhm.
He really doesn't care about women at all. That's not his focus is dancing, being seen. And you don't get into this, but maybe there's something else,
Mhm.
besides even the contest and, earning a few bucks here and there. Makes him feel good because people tell him he's good.
Right.
And that's just so important.
Well, and that's such a good point to point out too, because now that I'm thinking back on it, throughout the entire movie, he's never trying to like, for the most part, he's not really trying to like make passes at women or trying to get, to the end goal there, so to speak, as the rest of his friends are, as you see with, what goes on with them. He's really just looking for the best dance partner out there.
Yeah, because there's one scene where that girl goes up to the back, like I suppose, like the balcony
Yep.
bit, I
Yep.
suppose,
Mhm.
and then she said, "Are you as good as in
Yeah.
bed as you dance?"
Yep.
And he's just like, "Let's find out." But he's on about dance.
Dancing. He's
Right.
talking
And
about
he's
Dancing.
like,
dancing.
yeah,
Not talking about having sex
his,
here. I'm
that's
talking
his
about dancing.
focus.
Yeah.
Whereas his friends, obviously, because they can't dance and they don't have his ability, they're more focused on, well, what, they're the coattail riders. What can we get tossed our way after he says no to them, type of thing.
Now we're going to talk about the music, because at this point in the film is the first iconic dance. It's the Night Fever line
Mhm.
dance, which is called the Brooklyn Shuffle. And I
Mhm.
do remember as a kid, because my dad had the album, I do remember learning part of this when I was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, because everyone did. So I'm gonna I'm going to pull up a little bit about the soundtrack here,
Mhm.
but I do want to share the secret about how this film was edited, because I think it's really important to know this at this point in time to appreciate the genius of the Bee Gees. You won't believe it, but every scene in this movie, every dance in this film was filmed before the songs were even written.
Really?
Now, how is that possible? Because this film was made with different music. And whilst in editing, the producers decided the music sucked. And
Mhm.
they called up the Bee Gees and said, "Can you write music to fit these dances? We're not going to refilm the dances." And they did. Every song on this album written by the Bee Gees, there's like two that there are a few that weren't. I think the salsa dance, the one by the Latino dancers,
Mhm.
was in the film. The other music, the Bee Gees wrote the music to match the beat of the dances. That is
No kidding.
unbelievable to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
But
incredible.
it truly happened. And the Bee Gees describe it in a couple of their like behind the scenes videos, documentaries, those sort of things. But oh my
I, s-
gosh, like
I suppose that's how they
how?
score classical music, isn't it? Like to
It is
movies.
like
It's
Yeah,
how,
that's
yeah,
a fair
like how
point.
they do it. So it's
like
very,
a
you know,
score. Mhm.
you've got to score it first and then come up with that. I'm guessing the lyrics are very secondary to it, but that beat, you know, they're looking at the timing beats for it. So
But for that dancing, right?
mm.
Now, if you ever watch the film again and you
I
see him
wonder,
doing
if the like I wonder if they've got a version with the original out there
oh,
somewhere,
I'm sure there are.
hidden in a vault somewhere. You know, different
I'm
tones
sure
and
there
everything.
are.
Mm.
In the very beginning, the iconic walk, if you watch it again with what I just told you in mind, you will notice that it's not on beat. You think it is in your head, but it's not quite. He's walking slightly faster than the music. So,
Mhm.
how important is the soundtrack? It's the second highest selling soundtrack of all time. It was only bumped off in the, I don't know, the 20 teens with The Bodyguard. And The Bodyguard only had one song that was popular, and that was Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, written by Dolly Parton, by the way. Um, but that one song
Mhm.
that just was a global blockbuster made that the highest selling soundtrack of all the time. This was for, you know, from the minute it was released until it was bumped off by The Bodyguard. It was number 1 in the United States for 24 straight weeks.
Wow.
It was the best-selling album of all time, not just soundtrack, for 5 years, but then Michael Jackson released Thriller in 1982 and bumped it
Mhm.
down a few pegs. I mentioned that the songs, the Bee Gees songs and other of the disco tracks were added. They were written, produced, performed, post-production. There are 17 songs on this album. There were 5 additional songs written, including more songs by the Bee Gees that were written that had to be dropped. There just wasn't enough room on the album. 8 of the songs on this album made number 1. And what would happen is Staying Alive was released first and was number 1 for 4 weeks. The minute that the next song was released, How Deep Is Your Love, it bumped off Staying Alive and it stayed in number 1 for 17 weeks. At that time, the producers were realizing, "Oh, we shouldn't release the next one yet because we don't want to bump this one." So they waited
Mhm.
17 weeks and then they released Night Fever, which immediately bumped How Deep Is Your Love and stayed at number 1 for 8 weeks. And I could go on and on. That's how it happened for If I Can't Have You, A Fifth of Beethoven, Jive
So
Talking, You Should
good.
Be Dancing, and Disco Inferno. Of course, Disco Inferno. 8 songs reached number 1. Now, are you ready for this one?
Mhm.
10 songs were top 10. 2 of the songs that were dropped from the album altogether made the top 10. How on earth is that possible? It wasn't on the album, but it made the top 10. Well, they were released on compilation albums. The song Emotion by Samantha Sang, probably her only like a one-hit wonder,
Mhm.
reached number 3, and Destiny's Child covered it a few years ago. And then Don't Throw It All Away was released first by the Bee Gees and then by Andy Gibb, the youngest Gibb brother, and
Mhm.
reached number 9. So I go into all that to say how iconic this soundtrack is.
Oh, absolutely.
And the impact that it had on music and the impact that it had on dance and the impact that it had on everything. Um, when I put this on the list and when the Wheel of Film blessed us with this film, right away everyone was talking about the music, and I still think the music overshadows in people's memories the
The movie.
story, right?
Yes.
Because I think you forget it
100%.
because the music is so good.
Mhm.
I
It
think it's
grabs
that if literally me and my girlfriend were laughing because it reminded both of us because we were same age, like of those like those 80s 90s weddings in the
Oh,
UK.
yeah.
It's like
Mhm.
it got to a certain point where the 40-year-olds started getting a little bit too much like to drink, and then they started to dance, and then the disco DJ or whatever started putting on all of this kind of music to kind of
Mhm.
get everybody get jaring up, and it just reminded me like every bit of that is kind of it reminded me of that. Now, do I like the music? Not my taste, but I can understand it fit with a period of time. But yeah, they're
Mhm.
like now I would say a lot of people would say it's cheesy music, I suppose, isn't it? Because it's been out there for so long. Like everybody knows the lyrics, like not 100%, but everybody can do like that kind of dance, that kind of swagger to the music.
Mhm. See, I still love the music. Since I
Yay.
have no general opinion on the disco era. Obviously, I wasn't there. Like the era. I can understand that how Sandy described earlier, that kind of disdain the '60s folk had for the '70s folk, because it's similar even nowadays. You always hear people, even my generation's doing it now, where it's like, oh, the music you guys listen to now is crap. It's got no heart. It's got no soul. The music I listen to is better. So I think we always kind of do that generation to generation. And I can definitely see the difference from, people who were listening to Bob Dylan and such in the 60s to having this kind of, a lot less soul to it, but this fun, dancey pop music, because that's essentially what it was. It's like today's version of modern day pop, where it's on in the clubs, people dance to it. You go to a wedding, like Stacey said, that's what people are dancing to. Songs that I would never listen to in my own playlist. But if I'm at the wedding and it comes on, I'm out there cutting the rug like anybody else. So I do understand that side of it for sure. But just in general, I really do just enjoy this music. In terms of like a second it comes on, the body just naturally starts grooving a little bit, even if I'm sitting in the couch watching it, or like yesterday when the credits are rolling and I kind of got up to go throw some dishes in the sink and all that, and I'm dancing my way over
You're
there. So
strutting.
there's something
Yeah.
so fun about this music. So I do wonder if people can kind of pull it away from that, maybe the aggravation they might have had with the disco scene and the people who are into the disco scene, if that gives a better appreciation for the music, or if it's just so tied together, one and the other, that you can't, or if it's really just the music itself is just something, people don't care for.
I think when
Sorry,
you
I learned how to strut watching
Oh my.
Attaboy, Rick.
doing it. That's it. Long leather and cowboy boots. There we go.
We need to see that, Rick.
Mental image need to be burned.
We need to see that. So now we meet Annette.
Mhm.
Annette in the article is Donna, interestingly enough, played by Donna Pascal. And you get a feeling you don't have to know her backstory to know her backstory. She's
Mhm.
also lower middle
Yeah.
class or lower class. She works in a shop. It's almost like the Walmart of whatever area, the Brooklyn area at that time.
Mhm.
She's in a dead end job. She can kind of dance. In the article, she wasn't a good dancer. Here in the film, you get the feeling like she's the next tier down
Mhm.
from Stephanie. Um, in the article, you learn that she's known Tony her whole life and she's loved him her whole life,
Mhm.
probably from childhood. She has loved and adored him. She has watched him every Saturday night. She comes to the club. She sits in the booth alone. She might order a drink, but she sits there staring and glaring at Tony. He might say hi to her from time to time, but she knows he's looking right through her. But
Mhm.
she still goes every Saturday night. Now, in her mind, as he's 19, maybe she's
Right.
18, maybe she's 20, maybe she's a year older, but you get the feeling that she's realizing her time is passing her by. She's not going to be young They all feel like they're older than they are. They feel
Mhm.
like this is the most important time in their life. She's getting more and more desperate. She needs to be with Tony. She can't dance as well as him, but she's gonna try. She's gonna get out there, and you'll see, her bumping people out of the way when he's doing the
Yep.
line dance so
Yeah.
so she can be next to him. She knows a few moves and she can keep up with him. You get the feeling that maybe they've danced in a competition before and maybe
Mhm.
they've done well, but she's not quite as good as he is. Um, she can't get him to love her, but maybe he can like her if she has sex with him. And that doesn't go well either.
Mhm.
She's just desperate. It's the desperation.
Mhm.
She has nothing else either. All these
Right.
all these characters in this film, they have nothing else but their own little teeny tiny world.
Mhm.
But she loves Tony and she always has. And that's not going to go away for her. And so again, she's becoming desperate. I don't think she has any other friends. She's probably the hanger on.
Mhm.
Um, it's a really sad story. I think hers is a
It
sad story,
is.
but she's
Yeah.
still a horrible person. They're
Yeah.
all horrible people.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think one thing you pointed out just now, which is important in terms of kind of getting a grasp of Tony, his friends, and this girl, they are very young, and they seem. I think because watching it now, you see them in this club, and automatically I think like, oh, they've got to be above 21, and it's like, no, not at that point. They would have been under it. So they're all like 19-ish. Say, I know he says he's 19, so let's just generally say they're all in the same range, 18, 19, 20-ish. So they're all very, very young. So they're still kind of coming out of that high school era of infatuations and thinking that the person you have a crush on might be with somebody else. And it's like world shattering type stuff. When really it's like, as you get older, you realize, plenty of other people out there, find the one right for you type of thing. But they're all very like, especially her, she's very focused on this infatuation with Tony.
Mm. It's
Which
an obsession, isn't it?
yeah,
Cody?
that's what it
It's
is.
an
It's like,
obsession.
is it? She says she loves him, but is it really just that young kind of obsession that, like, and like Sandy said, I remember going through this myself at that age when like people are going off to different colleges, and you're like, did I miss my chance with that one girl I had a crush on all these years, all that kind of thing. So I think that is kind of creeping up on her in the same, because again, they have that very immature, younger kind of mind state of, you know, the world we're living now is the like it's the everything. It's hard to get past that, realizing there's a lot more to life until you kind of get past that like 23, 24, 25 age. So they're really still stuck in that, like, everything I know and everything I've known thus far is my whole world, so it means everything to me. And
Yeah.
she,
But
I
I
think,
think it's
was a
like
perfect
this.
example of that.
Yeah, this coming out of like high school, as you say, because they're like 19. But literally, they are that this is their world, this is their bubble.
Yep,
So
it's all
she's
they
not
know at this
found.
point.
That's who I found. There's nobody
Right.
else. Look who's around. There's nobody better. And then you look at like if she wanted one of his friends, well, she probably could have done like, but they're morons. So
Right.
like then and everybody else just isn't up to standard. Who's the best? They in their little sphere, it's Tony.
The
And
best,
that's
the
it. And she's
worst.
just driven to it to
Mhm.
like to kind of drive her to what we see later.
Right. And even Tony, he's got that very immature mind state too, of that younger 19, 18-year-old age of like, like Sandy said, he gets annoyed when people dance with one another. Like, he's very possessive in that sense. Like, dancing means a lot more to him, which is similar to things you would see in high school, the days of like, oh,
Mhm.
this one's wearing this one's football jersey on Friday before the big game. And people get all bent out of shape about things like that. So it was a very interesting to see them kind of play on that young love and the kind of the sting it leaves behind type of relationships, at least with, or not even young love, that young obsession, really, because it's kind of infatuation, and maybe might be a better word than obsession, but she does come off as a little obsessive, but even he
Very
shows a lot of
emotionally
that.
immature.
Right.
Yeah.
Emotionally mature. He is as well. He looks at dancing the same way as, younger teenagers in terms of 18, 19-year-olds look at their stuff like, oh, whose sweatshirt are you wearing type of thing, causes a whole big fight and all that. So it was a very interesting look at how it might have been for younger, fresh out of high school, 19, 20-year-olds of that era versus the era I grew up in. Because although it was different stuff, I'm like, I could think back to my high school days and being like, oh man, it's still very similar in the terms of that. And that's another reason why I like what Sandy pointed out earlier, that this was a movie about the 70s filmed in the 70s. So it was an exact capture of that time versus feeling like somebody was making it now, trying to apply things that maybe happen now or that maybe go on now in people's lives. and apply it to the 70s, you could actually see like, no, this was a little snippet of the 70s, and go figure, I went through similar things when I was in high school. So it kind of shows that like, no matter what era you're in, people do still act the same, or young kids, immature is still immature, and it's always going to be. I really like that way of being able to kind of peek back into the 70s more authentically than doing it now and trying to make it like the 70s.
And the song, the song "If I Can't Have You," I think if they would have named
Yes.
that Annette's theme, that would have been Annette's
Yep.
theme.
Yeah.
And that was the song when I was little. I really liked that song.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
It's a good
Yvonne
one.
Elliman, shout out to, she had 2 hits. She had "If I Can't Have You," which was her number 1 hit, but she also played Mary Magdalene in Andrew Lloyd Webber's production of Jesus
No
Christ
kidding.
Superstar. And so she
Okay.
had "I Don't Know How to Love Him," which was a huge song from the film the original film Jesus Christ Superstar. But
Mhm.
that song, "I don't know why I'm surviving every lonely day when there's gotta be no chance for me. My hurt won't end, and it doesn't matter how I try." And,
Mhm.
you just listen. The song is just so sad
Mhm.
everywhere. And it's a happy dance song. If you don't
Oh,
listen to
yeah.
the words,
You could just dance
you're just
Yeah.
away.
dancing. "If I can't have you," and you're smiling, and then you listen to the words, and it's like, wow. And I love the lyrics to that
Mhm.
song, to dreams that never will come true.
Mhm.
If I can't have you. And I guarantee everyone here and everyone in chat and everyone who listens to this or watches this stream later can remember someone in their life,
Oh,
even
absolutely.
if it was in grade school or high school,
Absolutely.
and that
Oh,
dream will never come true. But that
mhm.
feeling which was so horrible then. And you kind of look back on it now and you're like, and it goes into the quote, "Better to have loved than lost than never to have loved than all."
Mhm.
It's kind of a warm feeling to look back on that. But
Mhm.
for her, it's so sad.
No,
She's never
absolutely.
gonna get anything she wants, so why
Mhm.
bother? She's gonna throw it all away. She's just in one Hail Mary
Mhm.
act of desperation, she's gonna say, "Tony, have your way with me."
Yep.
And doesn't work out the way she planned because, well, there's a risk there. Let's just put it
Right.
that way. There's a risk, and Tony's not gonna take that risk with her. That hurts her. She says, "But
Mhm.
I love you, Tony." And he says, "Oh, Jesus."
Yeah, he just, like,
And
Yeah.
rejects it the whole way through.
Yeah, I've heard it before. Go away. It's kind
Right.
of the moment, isn't it? Really.
there are
Right.
a few other moments where she's looking at him so desperately, later while they're dancing. He just looks through her.
Mhm.
And he even
Mhm.
says to her, she says, "I'm not," he said, "I'm just this for dancing. That we're
Right.
just here for dancing."
Mm. Well, it's even to
And
the point when they are dancing, and then he is like sees Stephanie,
Yep.
who's that, and he just like belittles like that, and he asks somebody else who's that, and it's like that he kind of gets the eye on her that she's got a move. She can like he recognizes, and her dancing at the time isn't very over the top. But he knows that she could make a better
Mhm.
partner. And it's even to like how then Tony treats Annette. Like when they do like let's do the contest, I suppose you want to call it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then he just dismisses her. Literally, no, I've got somebody better. You can go. And it's like it's business kind of thing. Like it's
yeah.
and he's
Mhm.
even then he's letting her down hard, but still not telling her to look like that. And she's just there to just be close to him. Like, yeah, I'm struggling to dance. I might not be the greatest, but it's her last desperation of like I just need that intimacy with you,
Right.
even if it's through dancing, because that's
Mhm.
Right.
all I'm gonna get.
And I think in her mind, she sees it like, well, if we can win this
Mm.
contest, if I can win this with him, he'll look at me as more of an equal. Maybe I'll have a shot. It's
Yeah,
like I think there's still just this further game plan with her of it's all centered around him and getting with him. Whether it's the immediacy of if we practice now, then I'll literally be right next to him for X amount of time, all these days, to the idea of, well, maybe later down the road we do this, we win, it'll lead to a relationship type of thing. So she really is just her entire world revolves around, Tony.
You feel sorry for her at times, but
Mhm.
then you don't. She makes such bad choices.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
makes
yeah. But
such
they all
bad
do.
choices. They
Right.
all
They
do.
all are
Make that.
morally,
Yeah.
not the strictest of morals, all of them. You know,
Yeah.
even Tony, who I think we all agree probably has the best moral compass, or the most, maybe at least obvious moral compass. Like, you can see where he knows things are right and wrong, but even he does stuff that's like, oh dude, what are you doing?
Yep.
Yeah, you're like, oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like,
what an awful thing to say. And it's
right,
like, what an awful way to act, and he just does
Mhm.
it. And you're like, yeah, we get to the
right. And part of it
nitty
is
gritty of it.
right. And part of it, I do think, again, is because they're so young. They don't, again, they're so focused in their worlds that they haven't experienced enough things to happen to them to have developed that moral compass more, or even that bit of self-worth. Like, not for nothing, this Annette character should have just been like, you know what, dude, screw you. I'm moving on to somebody else who's going to treat me properly. But she doesn't have that self-worth yet because she's still so young and she's still so infatuated with this guy. And to her, this guy is the end all be all. There isn't another fish out in the sea for her, even though we all know, obviously, there is when you're in those situations. But yeah, it's an interesting depiction of the younger age of people, in a different era, and how it's
Mhm.
pretty much the same no matter what era you're in. It's just how people are.
And in the article, you find out more about her, and that she has even a worse home life. And you can kind of, you know, when you know that, then you don't forgive her behavior, but you have a little more sympathy for her desperation,
Mhm.
because there's also nothing for her to go home to.
Right.
She's
Yeah.
treated poorly at home. She's treated poorly everywhere. And she idolizes Tony.
Mhm.
Now, the next day, we kind of talked about the raise. The next day is the raise.
Mhm.
And his boss, you know, says, I'm going to give you 250. And Tony is honestly, politely
Yeah, I
grateful.
loved that.
He is so grateful. And the shop owner, being a good person, perhaps the only good person in this film, he's embarrassed by how humble Tony is,
Mhm.
and actually wants to give him more. And they actually argue. It's kind of this backward argument where Tony's being more and more grateful, and the shop owner's feeling worse and worse about how little money he's offering, like $250 a week, oh, $3, $4, and it's $4. And then, you know, we talked about what happens when Tony goes home
Mhm.
and is proud, and you know, the embarrassment that his father feels. Now, when I had read you the quote, I took out some of the expletives, and I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned the C word a little earlier.
Yeah.
This is an R-rated film. I forgot to put on my notes, and it is one of the highest grossing R-rated films of all time. And people forget that this is an R-rated film. And it's an R-rated film for the topicality, the language, the scenes,
Yeah.
drug use, physical assault, etc.
Mhm.
in this film. But there was a PG version that was made for television, because I know I saw this film on television, because I was,
Mhm.
you know, a few months old or whatever when this film was released. So, um, I'm thinking to myself, this couldn't have been on television. No, they cut down a PG version, and
They must have cut
um,
out the last 20 minutes of the
Yeah.
movie. And that's it,
oh
literally like,
yeah,
that gone. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
and
weird.
dubbed all the. I can't imagine what
Yeah.
the dubbing sounded like with the expletives. I
Mm.
can't.
Mhm.
But again, that quote is, you know how many times anybody ever told me I was good at anything in my life? 2. This raise today, and dancing at the disco. And he feels like no one in his there's no one he could tell to who would be proud of him.
Mm.
No one who
Well,
would
yeah,
be
I'm
proud
guessing
of him.
because they're like the family. Like, you've got your job, you're just wasting your time dancing. It's not a job. It's a
Mhm.
little bit of fun. So why am I going to applaud that you can, you know, move your hips well? They don't see that it's going to be an end point of any way you could settle down, I suppose, like that, like
Right.
earn a living off it. Yeah, you might get a trophy, you know, yeah, $100 or whatever for winning, but it's like, yeah, who cares? It's like
Mhm.
that. You got to
And
work hard in the store, and I think there's a good scene of that is where the shop owner says like when he kind of does sack him kind of thing like that, but he like looks at the other two people like that, and they're kind
Mhm.
of really old, but then like one of them, he says, oh, he's been here like 30 years or whatever it is, and it just shows you like in his mindset as well. Oh, this is my life. This
Yeah.
is what I like, and it's got to be like, oh, and that's it, going away to to being a dancer and not pursuing it as a career like they have in other movies. You know, like they like later on, like other, I suppose, like dance movies where they try to do it as a career. This is literally no. I'm not going to earn money off it. I will get there at a point, but at a point, I'm going to be that guy.
Right.
Because my legs are going to go, my hips are going to go, but I've still got this. I can't give up this job.
And he references that at some point. I can't remember if it's with Stephanie or somebody else, but he references the idea of like, you know, I'm only young. I'm only this age for X amount of time. I'm only going to be dancing for X amount of time. I can't remember who he has that exchange with, but there is a point where he acknowledges that himself. And I think, and back to the point of the conversation with his father with the raise, Stasis, I think your point is spot on. And I think that's in terms of the family not really respecting his dancing. They surprisingly don't push back on it as much as I thought they would. You know, you would think you'd expect them to be like, all right, enough, quit the Saturday night dancing, quit blowing your money there, go pick up an extra job, this type of thing. So surprisingly enough, they don't push back on his dancing verbally as much as I would have expected, but they definitely don't respect it in terms of like a career thing or a good thing that he's doing. So I think that's part of the frustration he has. Yeah. Then on top of it,
sorry, just to go on that note before you go on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that was to the point of, because he's the youngest son, and the Frank. No, we're looking at Frank. We don't do whatever you like.
He's
Frank's the number one. Frank's the one that we want. You know, he's the one that we've done well with one of them at least.
Right. So like whatever you do doesn't matter type of thing. But no, I definitely agree that the family most likely doesn't like his dancing or just doesn't really care about it. They're not propping him up for it. They're not congratulating him for it. They figure it's just what he does on Saturday nights. Or as long as it doesn't interfere with his ability to work, whatever, like type of thing. So they don't, congratulate him or kind of boost him up for that side of his life. And I think what frustrates him even more in that side of his father's scene is that now I'm doing something good in the work side of my life, and that's not good enough either. So it's like, what exactly can I do to be good here outside of become a priest like Frank or whatever his brother's name is? So I think that builds up a little more frustration. That's why he says, you know, the only two things everybody's ever said that I was good at or did a good job at before is my dancing and is this raise. And you've now rejected both of them. So like, what are we even doing here? Like what conversation can we possibly have?
But I think that goes on when you find out that Frank's coming back. He's kind of disowned his path in life of maybe it wasn't his. It does sound like it very family driven. They're going to send one to train into the priesthood. There's the scene where he kind of gets told and he's like, oh, he's coming back. But then there's a little bit after that, the realism that, oh, are they going to try and push me to be that person, what I don't want to be, because now he's steady. Like I kind of got that he's kind of like, he loves his brother. He's like, you should do whatever you want, but in the back, did my family want me to go and replace him? Kind of if he doesn't go back, and it's just that kind of like another dynamic with the family don't talk openly about what's going on. They're just pissed off. They're just pissed off with the hand that they've been given. You know, like that. They're all an immigrant. So it's like from the grandmother, you can see that. And it's just like, we've been given a shitty American dream card, you know, like that. It's kind of, we've not been given it. And look at this. We kind of, the next hope, I suppose, of the boys. One did well, and then he's now thrown it back in our face. We did probably they probably spent a lot of money to get him to where he was going to be. And now they've got one that pisses away whatever he's got on dancing. And he works at a, the store. And then Frank is now lost when he comes back, and they don't want Tony to corrupt him when like he goes into takes him to the disco the first time, and it's like that like it's like a different world. He's probably never noticed it. He's not really heard about that kind of thing, but it seems like he's been away from the family wherever for like years, because he comes back into it like. It's like he's heard of this disco scene, but he's never experienced the disco scene. So he must have been sent away when he was quite young. Because Frank's quite young. I would say he's still like, if anything, he's only like a few years older than.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, like 22 max is like that. So he's got like years. And what are we going to say? Like priesthood, like 7 years training, whatever it is. It's quite a long thing. So he's like probably mid training, and then he's just given it up and it's gone back. And then the family, I got the to the point that they're looking Tony. No, be nice, corrupting. He's your brother, but we need to send him back. He needs, he needs to finish his training. But yeah,
I think today we look at parents who live vicariously through their children through sports. When they push their kids to, to do competitive sports and club teams and those sort of things. And for the old Italian families, and I come from a Russian and Polish family, and it was the same, that pride was to have someone in the priesthood that was living vicariously through your children. Maybe you weren't as successful, but you could have someone to brag on. And, Father, oh, do you know about my son, Father Frank? Father Frank's that's my boy. That's my, you can see that. You can see the mother just wanting to be proud of, of one of her kids. And you can also see Tony wanting his mom to be proud of him.
Right.
Well, it's even in like another movie, Godfather, is
Yep.
one of them goes off to serve in the military. Like they're just proud. Like you're not following us. You're doing like what we wanted to do, kind of. But we never, took it upon ourselves. So this is exactly the same. It's like and especially you can tell they're heavy Catholic. Like everybody's got a crucifix and all that. Is very don't like that. Even to like where Tony, the likable characters that says it's his sister. That first interaction, and I think it's one of the probably only ones except for around the table we have how he is with his like younger sibling. It's like that, and he has like that still love of the siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I was just going to say, Stasis, you just led right into it. It's interesting to see how that, because they absolutely put the brother Frank on a pedestal in terms of the family for what he's accomplished. He's up on the mantle, the whole deal, overlooking all of them at dinner. And you never see, and as far as anything about Tony's relationship with them, it's pure love. There's no jealousy. There's no resentment for the pressure, pressure he might have created inadvertently. He just loves his brother and he loves his sister as well. Like the family bond is actually really tight. It seems like in that family, it's just what the father's going through causes a rift. It just causes drama between them in terms of at least how he interacts with Tony. And you see a little bit of it, how he's now viewing the relationship with his own wife and the kind of the power struggle there, even if it's only really in his mind. And she's just kind of doing what she can to keep the family going. He sees it as a bit of a like, well, is this, because I don't have a job, blah, blah, blah. But then with his sister too, you're right. He walking up the stairs, gets that picture, and it's pure love. It's, oh, thank you for this picture. I'm going to hang it up in my room. There's it seems like the siblings have a really good relationship, and the parents are kind of I don't want to say overbearing, but they're kind of like puppet mastering as much as they can, and it's not really going their way. So you see the frustration start to build in them, especially.
But I think that's when Tony takes Frank to the disco, and then of course he goes dancing. I think he knows he's going to get that kind of well done, because that's what he's always had probably in the past, like he did with his sister, like that. Just I don't care, I'm just going to give you love. And I think when Frank gets there, he's a bit torn of like, this is a bit odd. Like I think a couple of his mates are like popping pills, aren't they? At the table. He's like that. And then the what's his name? Bobby.
Is
it Bobby? Is it? Yeah. And then
Bobby
he's like
C.
saying, he's like talking. He goes, like about an abortion. Like, would the Pope get, like, if he's like connected,
give it the
like,
okay type of thing?
Yeah, and it's like, would it be okay if you could get in, like, kind of like you could pick up the phone and speak to the Pope or like that, like. And it's just like, and it's just that kind of things. And you realize, like his mates aren't just like idiots. They are kind of idiots. Like Bobby is a bit like below average IQ. Like say, he hangs around. He's like, he gets bullied. They belittle him, but they use him, and he just sticks around. And when like I think one of the better scenes is when he's pleading to Tony in the walkway, like, can I just talk to you? I've got this problem. She's knocked up. And he's just like, you can see in his face, he just wants, you're my friend, and you're the one that I can talk to. The rest, I know, are just gonna belittle me. They're just gonna laugh in my face, like that. But you might give a bit of like a bit more sensible conversation, like give me an advice. And he just literally just goes, I'll call you. You know, just
Yeah, I'll
dismisses
call
them,
you.
like,
Give
and
me
he's
the
just like,
car,
You're gonna
which is
call
what
me? You're gonna
yeah,
they
call
all use
me?
them
Yeah,
for.
yeah, yeah. I'll call you.
yeah,
I'll call you.
and it just, but how he does it is dismissive, and you can see it like, oh,
Mhm.
I please just do it. Just literally, I need that advice, even if
Right.
it's the wrong advice. I just want an advice. I just need that ear to like chew on, I suppose, like
Right.
to kind of
Mhm.
Well,
get
right,
that thing. And,
the
yeah, and
shoulder
he's
to cry on type of
yeah,
thing.
and
Yep.
it's again when you get that from Tony, when you go, oh, he's doing the right thing, and you're like, oh, look what you're doing again.
Right.
And
You
every time
think
you're like, it's
Mhm.
that disappointment. It's just like that, and that's why that we said like every character is near enough an arsehole in this
Right.
whole movie, because
In the
as soon
whole
as they
movie.
do something, as soon as they get to that, oh, they might do something right, and then they do it like, oh, the next
Right.
scene, you're like, oh, bloody hell, what did you just do there? But yeah, it's that kind of, yeah, what we said, I think Jay said the moral
Mhm.
compass is just
Mhm.
completely off on all of them. They do that right thing, and then it goes switches right
Right.
around to do the wrong thing in the next scene.
And what I liked about that scene where they are walking down the sidewalk and they're having that little exchange, Tony and Bobby. Um, obviously, you know, Bobby's trying to plead, kind of filling him in on the whole deal and trying to get his advice. And Tony's just like, yeah, but I got somewhere to be. So it doesn't seem like Tony's doing it maliciously to just be stuck in his own world. He actually has something he wants to go do, which is help, you know, Stephanie move and all that. So his priorities are out of line in terms of when a friend's asking him for help. But he doesn't do it in a way that the other guys do, which is a little bit more malicious of like the bullying and all that, blowing him
Yeah.
off type of thing. But what I love about it is that, so after, again, and then Tony says, you know, I'll call you later. Thank you. Thanks for the car. I needed this. So he takes the keys and he goes off to go do what he was going to do. So again, Bobby's feeling used, like I'm just here for the car. But then he starts breaking down in the middle of the street and crying. And at first I took it as like, oh, he's just crying about the situation he's put himself in. But then afterwards, I realized like, no, he's probably crying there because at this point he's tried to talk to his other friends, didn't work. Tried to talk to the priest. The priest was kind of like, because of this, well, former priest, because of the spot he's in now, he's kind of like, I'm really not interested in taking this on right now. Like, you have to go talk to your local priest, whatever he says there, and doesn't really give him any advice. So now his last resort is to his friend Tony, who he idolizes. And even Tony now won't give him the time of day. So I think at that point, that's why he breaks down. It's like, geez, on top of this situation I've put myself in that I don't know what to do, the one person I had left to think that could help me just blew me off the same as everybody else. I think it's just that kind of culmination of everything where he just then turns around, walks away crying, which was, you know, it was a tough scene in terms of, you know, you feel for the guy. Obviously, like Stasis said, it doesn't seem like he's of the highest IQ in general. He's put himself in this tough situation between having a baby or marrying a girl he probably doesn't know that well or doesn't really want to marry, but the pressure of people around him is saying you got to marry him or you got to do, you know, the other route. So then on top of feeling all the turmoil or just inside struggle from all that, now his last resort and help just basically blew him off and took his car like everybody else does. It just kind of is the last straw for him.
It's the desperation. It's
Right.
just similar to Annette's, right? What else
Mhm.
can I do? I've tried everything,
Right.
and there's nothing else that I can do. Now, just before that scene happened, though, I do want to go back to the night with Tony and Father Frank in the disco, because that's when Tony has his solo.
Oh
That's
man.
when he does You Should Be Dancing,
Yep.
and he does the
Oh,
entire
it's great.
solo.
It's great.
Now, I have a fact about that solo.
Mhm.
Similar to one of my favorite scenes of all times in Goodfella, that entire dance was one take.
Mhm.
And the cameras are hidden in all different parts of the disco. And there are, when you rewatch the film and you know that, you can actually see little places where you think the cameras are between some of the people in the disco. But an amazing one take
Yeah, very well done.
for the complexity of that dance and the physicality of that dance.
But yeah, if you take one thing of the bit, like he can bloody dance, and he still can
can
dance.
Oh yeah, he can move.
dance.
He can move.
All credit to that dance, but that was a fantastic scene.
And in very, very tight trousers. There was
Yeah.
no
Tight trousers.
Not a lot of breathing room in those.
Everyone else said, "Where's the buttock?" It's literally so tight, it's strapped in there.
Now, my dad didn't have the white pants and jacket, but my dad had the white shoes and the white belt to go with the dark pants, the flare pants. And my dad had the mutton chops, which were in, like, not a beard or a mustache, but the mutton chops. So yeah, my dad and his brothers were full in on disco at that time. And then also it's that night. So this is before he takes the car and before the breakdown. that you mentioned, Bobby. That's the first night you see them doing their stupid stuff on the bridge.
Yes.
So they
Yes,
drive to
yes,
the
yes.
Verrazano
Yes.
Bridge, and this is a little confusing for people who are not familiar with New York, but there's so much talk about Brooklyn, but there are different bridges, obviously, that connect Manhattan to the different boroughs and to New Jersey. So this is the Verrazano Bridge that they're goofing around on. And, you know, terrifying Annette, pretending that they all fell off at that point in time just to again, horrible people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
That's their version of a
Yeah.
prank.
horrible people. And you're also learning, because in between the 2 nights at the disco that we're focusing on, in between, he has been practicing with Stephanie.
Mhm.
She's a phony.
Mhm.
He's smitten with her the first time he sees her. She's dancing ballet. She looks like she's, out of his reach. She's better than him, and maybe she will better him, and maybe that's part of his attraction to her. She works in Manhattan. She lunches with Sir Laurence Olivier. No, she doesn't.
Yeah.
You find out
David
so
Bowie, she
quickly.
mentioned so many people.
David
Oh, yeah,
Bowie,
Bowie, she
Yeah.
said.
or Bowie. No, she says Bowie.
Something, yeah,
Bowie.
she says some weird way.
But
I
her,
think you see that when he's moving as well, like when
oh
she
yeah,
goes in, and then
Mhm.
there's this he's an older fella, and
Mhm.
it's like I think Tony's smart enough to know what is going on
Oh,
and
that's how
how
you
she's
got where
kind
you
of
are.
that's how you
yep.
might like you might be in the same building as these people and you're elaborating, but this
Right.
is how you got into a kind of good steady job. Is how
Mhm.
to say it, you kind of opened your legs. It's kind of like
Mhm.
he gets it straight away because he gets pissed. He gets
Mhm.
seriously pissed because you're my dance partner. I don't need to know that you've had sex. It's kind of a weird. It's like you're mine now.
He's
But this
very
guy's got this kind of bit of brag about him. Like, yeah,
He
look, this
just
is my old place.
comes right in,
Yeah,
plants one on her as if she
yeah.
was expecting a type of thing, and he's
Mm,
just Tony's taken back by it because, well, it's like you said, Sandy, it's all an act. She
mm.
spends that entire time in the coffee shop just bragging and bragging because not only does she want to convince other people she's better than better than the world which she came from, she wants to try to continue to convince herself too. So she's
Yeah.
constantly
Mhm.
boasting herself up in this way. And then, right, like Stacey said, once he gets in there, he finally realizes, is like, oh yeah, you might think you're one of these types of people, but you're not. You came here through means that aren't necessarily, the same as how the other people got here in these nice brownstones and all that in Manhattan.
And you know what? I think the worst part of that interaction with, her boss, friend, whatever,
Mhm.
isn't the realization that, oh, this man's here. He corrects her grammar.
Oh, I didn't even
And
catch
that
that one.
cuts. Now you know that he's the one who's been trying to get her
Right, right.
to act a little more sophisticated, a little more
Mhm.
posh, and that compared to Tony, she's a better class. But
Right.
compared to this guy, she's still Brooklyn
She's the
trash.
same. Yeah, she's the same as Tony.
And her accent comes back,
Mhm.
her hard accent, so for her, both dancing and this job, they were her way out.
Right,
So
right.
Tony's way out was the dancing. Her way out was this job and maybe hooking up with this guy. Again, whatever they can do to get out.
Mhm.
And even though Tony sees her as so sophisticated, she's a mess like the rest of them. And she's just
Mhm.
as awful as the rest of
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because at first when you kind of see her, first you see her obviously in that initial dance scene in the club, and then at the studio where they practice and all that, and you almost feel like Tony's being a little bit creepy, like coming on a little too strong, and
Mhm.
you kind of start to feel like, oh, this is probably like a nice girl. You believe that because they set it up just visually. The fact that she's dancing ballet is a little bit more of a classy style of dance. You figure you come from
Yep.
some family that's put you in those lessons for years and have some money, all that kind of thing. So the way they visually set it up is for you to believe that, yes, she might actually be a class above Tony. Then the second she opens her mouth in that coffee shop, you realize like, oh, no, she's a faker just as much as anybody else.
She is. And for all of her, I think she's also, she doesn't want to admit it, but she would be using Tony for his dancing too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
she's seen him in the club and like he's got the moves. You know,
Right.
he
She's
And
a-
you see the guy she was dancing with is a little
Mm.
bit stiff. He's kind of like this.
Oh,
At
yeah.
first, he looks like he can dance, like keep up with her. But then,
Mm.
right at the end of that scene, when Tony's looking at her, you see her quite literally dancing circles around the guy, and he's trying to kind of figure out very awkwardly like how to fit back in with her dancing. Because at this
Mhm.
point, you can tell she's maybe trying to show off to Tony because they've met eyes, the whole deal. So she's literally going in circles around him, and he's awkwardly shuffling, trying to get back into a rhythm, but can't. So she knows ultimately this guy's the best dancer in town. So I need to dance with him as much as he
Yeah.
needs to dance with me.
But I don't
Mhm.
think like she doesn't care about the contest. The contest is for Tony to be
Mhm.
Yep.
at that. Oh, look at me moment.
Right.
Is because it's not going anywhere. It's just like the next like kudos. Like,
Right.
oh, well done to you, Tony. Like for that 6 months until the next thing. And it's
Mhm.
like that. So he's got that. He needs that. Whereas she, I don't think she comes across as like, well, very much at the start that she needs it. Like it's him. So she plays
Right.
that against him a lot, I think.
She's
Mhm.
going to use him.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
first thing she uses him for is to move in to her new home.
Mhm.
He loses his job literally
Mhm.
to help her move. He takes Bobby's car to help her. He gives up everything
But
like
she
a
even
puppy.
tells her, he even tells her, and she's just like, oh, did you?
Oh, well, I had to
Yeah,
move
like, oh
in
well.
today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I had
did
to
that. I
move
had
in
to again.
today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then she kind of realizes a little bit like, ooh, that was a little bit rough. And she's like, well, I'm sorry, you didn't have to lose. I'm sorry you lost it, whatever.
Mm.
But still, it's like this kind of like going by the motions way of saying it. Like she didn't really mean it. She just felt like she could see that he was a little aggravated that she didn't respond the first time the way he thought she would.
Mhm.
Because he was expecting like, hey, I lost my job for you, and her to be like, oh my God, really? I love you. Thank you. And it really just came off as like her continuing to be stuck up. So she realized that and kind of gives a little like, well, I am sorry that happened, blah, blah, blah. But it's still like, it's so hollow and not real because she's just a very self-centered fake character.
It's like, you hear people make comparisons today and or like throughout history about people who become nouveau riche or have new celebrity, and
Mhm.
they think that famous people treat other people a certain way, and it's completely the
Right.
opposite.
Mhm.
Right? People who really are wealthy, well off, to the greatest extent, are usually extraordinarily nice and kind people to the people who support them and quote serve them. And here I think that flippant comment from her, maybe that's the way she was treated in her office or whatever.
Mm.
Well, I needed to move today.
Right.
And she does to your point, she does realize it, but I just ugh, again, she's just an awful, awful person.
Mhm.
This is the night after he drops her off that one of the gang decides they're going to get some payback for Gus being beaten up.
Mhm.
In the book, or the short story, Gus is beaten up by a gang of those who are described as Latino, but nothing comes of that in the book. They're all talk in the
Mhm.
short story. That's the thing. They all talk tough. They all flex and pretend to be Bruce Lee or Rocky, but there's no action until in the short story, until Tony's little sister is followed through a park at night
Mhm.
and almost molested. And when she comes home in terror and describes the person who was following her and making inappropriate comments to her, the gang gets together and gets their revenge for family, for honor,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
That's when they finally, but everything else is just big talk, all
Right.
talk and no action. Here, and it's Double J who's so riled up
Yeah.
about Gus being beaten up in the hospital. And when they're all kind of circling the building deciding what to do, he actually like shoves Bobby over farther on the driver's side of the car as far as you could be. He
Mhm.
puts his foot on the accelerator and pulls the steering wheel to back the car into the garage where the Barracudas are. So they crash through the door.
Mhm.
They all jump out. Bobby then drives the car away, scared, terrified, goes around the block a few times. They all come out having been beaten up. You find out later when they're all proud and they're all dressed up, by the way, they're cleaned up and then dressed up for that night because that's the night of the contest.
Yeah.
They go to visit Gus just before the contest, and Gus, you mentioned Bobby not having a good IQ. I don't think Gus had a very high IQ either because he
No.
said, "Oh, I thought it was the Barracudas. It probably wasn't. I don't know. It
Yeah.
could have been anyone."
Mhm.
These
He
guys
I
almost got
think
killed.
he could have tripped and done it himself. It's like that kind of how he was speaking. I was like, did you actually get beaten up? He just didn't. He just like, yeah, he's just, you know, who do you know that you think, you know, that would have beaten me up, and it would have, you know, it could have been like a couple of, I don't know, high school girls that could have beaten him up, but like he just wanted to, oh, you've heard of these people, you know,
Right,
so
right.
yeah, you know, it's like, yeah, and then when
Oh
he goes,
gosh,
oh,
it
you,
could have been.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
And
it was just like, oh, it just
Yeah.
seemed like it was like, oh, I'm embarrassed how I got beaten up, or like,
Right,
you know,
right.
I slipped down the stairs. He wanted that moment of like, you know, kind of like I got beaten up, but you know, I held
Yeah,
my
I got
ground, kind
jumped,
of thing like
yeah.
that. But like, you've heard of these, so I'm, you know, I'm and then when they call, he goes, I'm not too sure, and then kind of like the repercussions of like them, yeah, doing it is going to come back at them like
Mhm.
way about past the movie, of course, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's like they're like Tony's realization of like, you just put us in the shit as well,
Right.
because you know, if that wasn't the people, they're gonna come back at us, you know.
Mhm.
It's not an eye for an eye now, it's like they've got the eye for the eye.
And what's interesting, I think, about that for Bobby's character in that whole scene is one, although was it Double J was the guy's name, right? I think Double
Yes.
J,
The
the one
one
who was
who was
aggressive.
so aggressive, yeah.
Yeah.
So Bobby, as well as the other guys, are kind of like, well, I think they say like there's 6 of them in there plus a few women, so they're planning like, well, let's maybe just let the numbers come down in terms of the Barracuda hangout spot.
Right.
And then Double J freaks out and just kind of takes the wheel, goes right into it. And throughout that whole scene, you hear a couple shouts for Tony, are you okay? Tony, this, that, the other thing. And I believe they all come from Bobby, who's still in the car at this point, that's crashed through the wall. So Bobby, in this whole scenario of seeing everybody get beat up and tossed around, he still really only cares about Tony and Tony's, you know, health and wellness in this spot. So again, it kind of shows you, it touches a little bit more on how much Tony means to Bobby. And then obviously, you know, he backs
Well,
out.
he's
of it,
the
but
leader, isn't he? He's the leader. He's
right.
If without him, there's not really a friend group, because he takes them there. So yeah, he's looking up to the one, you know, who
he's definitely
is he idolizes him? I don't know that. I think he's just desperate. He's just desperate for a connection with like a male figure, I suppose.
I saw it as a little bit of a mix of both. So I see Tony as the head of the group. The next 3, Gus, Double J, and the other guy there, I find them to be a little bit more of considering themselves equals. And then they all look at Bobby as kind of the bottom tier of the group. So I think the three in the middle look at Bobby as like the leader, but like, you know, the coolest of the group type of thing. Not so much idolization or anything like that, but just like, oh, he's the guy. We ride his coattails. We benefit off it, such and such. You know, we are friends from being kids. But Bobby, I see as a little bit more of definitely looking at him as like the leader of the group, but also a slight bit of idolization. I do think he looks at because he's, you know, weak in personality, weak in ability to kind of stand up for himself, not the smoothest when it comes to dancing or talking. I think he looks at Tony as kind of like the perfect picture of what he wants to be at some point. So I do think there's a slight bit of idolization, as well as just kind of, you know, he's the leader of the group. I kind of do what he says, that little bit of desperation or depression rather in him too. But I find him to be, well, another thing that I found interesting in that is that in that scene where obviously it shows a little bit more about his care about Tony over the rest of them, or even just his perception of Tony versus how he views the rest of them. And then obviously he backs out. They start insinuating like, where the hell were you? And he's like, oh, I was just driving around. And they all kind of know, but they're getting at the idea of like, where the hell were you, you coward? You should have been in there with us. So then that gets further pushed into his character and his kind of cycle of depression that he's going into, where you see he's the first one to kind of bring it up in the hospital when he's talking to Gus. And then when they were in the car afterwards, he's like, so you guys think I'm a coward or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Double J is like, well, what do you think you are? Kind of getting at the idea of like, it's not us, dude. It's you. It's the fact. This is what you did in that situation. So again, it just kind of continues to like we said about the Godfather quote earlier, just as a Sopranos quote rather. He's kind of grinding himself into a nub of just like he's pushing himself further and further down with one, the disrespect from his friends, the situation he's put himself in, his perception of himself. He is just grinding himself down mentally in terms of his self-esteem.
This is the point in the film. Interestingly enough, we're rising to the, you know, the contest, right? The kind of the fever pitch of the film, but it's what happens just before and during this fight that is the downfall, right, of all of their characters. So you've got the realization that Gus was like, I don't know, maybe it was the Barracudas. Bobby has disappointed them, or shall I say this, they now have a reason to really be not happy with Bobby. This is where everything is unraveling. You get to the dance contest, and really and truly, their dance is not great.
It's not.
And
it's
they
really
know
not.
it. He knows it. They all know it. They all know when they see the Latino couple, when they see the other couple. When I'm watching, I think they showed 3 dances, but there was a 4th that won second place or third place. They're all better than him and Stephanie. And he knows it. They all know it, but racism is going to allow them to win because, well, number one, he's the draw for the club. Tony's got to win. He's the face of the club. And number 2, and you do hear some language throughout this film that would be not acceptable today, referencing the African American community, the Latino community, you name it, every derogatory term you can think of. There's no way they're going to give a trophy to a Hispanic couple. No way. But they were 10 times better. He knows it. And this is where he sees Stephanie for what she really is. Not when he meets her in the apartment, not when she flippantly says, oh, well, you lost your job, essentially. Not when he starts to realize she's a phony. I think this is when he realizes who Stephanie is, because he says, we didn't deserve it. And she said, of course we did. We were great. No, they danced a nice dance. Wasn't earth-shattering. And this is where he does have a hint of a moral compass.
Yeah.
He gives, and maybe the Catholic upbringing, who knows, but he gives the prize. And by the way, the other couples are thrilled because they came in second and third. They're jumping up and you can imagine it's all their friends and family around them congratulating them. And it's a great scene. But he goes and gives them the trophy and the money. And he says, you deserve this. You deserve this. You won. And he's angry now because he realizes he's not that good, but he's been told he's that good by this shallow group of people he's
bunch of
surrounded
yes
himself with. And all these people who look up to him, and he's just drawing people into this club or that club. He's good. He's not the best. And he'll have to do better.
Right.
And he's angry, and now he doesn't know what his relationship is with Stephanie. And so he's going to go to the least common denominator and throw her in the backseat of the car. And fortunately, it doesn't go further than that. Unfortunately, it got to that point. And there's no redemption, right? At this phase, you think, in terms of their characters, it can't get worse from here. Oh, but it does. But you think at this point in the car, and then here comes Annette. And what's Annette going to do? She's going to disgrace herself. She's done. She's been popping pills. She's been drinking. She's also, this is it. Everyone at this point of this film is rock bottom now. As bad as they were. And how can it possibly get any worse?
Yeah. But you can see, like, spoilers, I suppose, big time all the way through. But Annette, when she does the condoms, oh, I'm ready, like that.
Right.
And I'm guessing even Tony's his eyes roll back, and he's just like, look, I've just done this. Like his nose just kind of like he's kind of sexually assaulted kind of Stephanie, near enough like that. She said no, and he just kept on kind of pushing it. And then she comes up, gives him that, and you can see that eye rolling in the head. Like, one, what's just happened. She doesn't know that, but also he's Catholic. They're both Catholic, and she's gone, here's some condoms. Like it doesn't matter. I just want you to be my first. It doesn't mean anything to you. I know that. So have these, kind of like, and I'd be fine about it. And she's just like it's kind of like she's downgraded her womanhood, her body, kind of like that, for that self-assurance that he will have me if there's no risk. It's like it's over your skin, kind of like them two scenes back to back are very like
Right.
and like it's great to have the director or the editor kind of pin that together, because you just over that, Tony, what the hell did you just do? And then okay, what's going on now? And it's just like they play that bit well, I think, to make you go ouch.
No, absolutely, because they both come off as, again, it's the morals, it's the morals, the self-worth. You have him coming off of, what happens with him and Stephanie in the back of the car, and then you just have her where you're just like, man, this girl has because obviously the condoms represent a solution to the problem that happened earlier, because earlier in the movie they almost hook up in the backseat of the car, but then he asks, I think the wording he uses, "Are you fixed?" Which I thought was bizarre.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was a common way of saying it in the 70s, but what he means by it is like, "Are you on, birth control?" Or he rattles off all these options of what she may have to prevent this from happening, baby from happening. Essentially, is what he's worried about. So then later on, it kind of comes full circle with her having a handful of condoms, and he's just like, get out of here. I'm not doing this. And for her, that's kind of like the final straw of like, there's nothing else I can do then. And then she's onlooking the entire time they're having this dance contest, jealous as anything. So taking drugs and all this stuff. So at this point, she's just hit complete rock bottom in terms of her pursuit of Tony.
I'm going to give everyone a good time.
Yeah.
And it's not even,
plan.
I don't think it's to make Tony jealous. I think it's to get revenge. Slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different. She's no longer interested in him being interested in her. She's like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm just going to give everyone, a good time, and somebody will accept me, even if it's completely superficial.
So I saw it slightly different in terms of her not caring about his interest in her anymore. I think it was more of in that moment when she's come up with her plan to, hook up basically with his friends in the backseat of the car while he's in the front seat, which is just bizarre. But when she comes up with that plan, I think she's still pretty inebriated in terms of the drugs and the alcohol and all that, because she's in the backseat seemingly enjoying herself at first. Then she catches a couple glimpses of Tony. And that's when I think the sobriety of the situation starts to come back in, and she's like, crap, what am I doing here? And then, all right, I'm trying to think of a way to say this so it's YouTube friendly. So the person she's with is reaching the conclusion of what he's doing.
Yes.
And she realizes, wait a minute, like back to the conversation she had with Tony earlier, she isn't prepared to, she doesn't want to have a child either. So I think that's the realization of what she's doing at that point kind of kicks in. She's like, oh crap, what am I doing? And then so she starts to get a little bit like, no, don't. And then obviously guy does. And then they pull over to say, all right, Double J, it's your turn now. So they switch to the backseat. At this point, she's full out like crying, like, please stop. I don't want to do this type of thing.
It's totally a different situation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It really is like a heartbreaking little bit to watch, but it's, and again, it's like, it's a spot she put herself in through that drug fueled bit of, revenge, because I think that is what it was at first, was revenge. And then obviously she goes through with it with these two situations. And then while looking at Tony in the front seat, and I think it all starts to come back to her like, crap, what am I doing? This was not the way I go about this, one, in terms of him, but two, for myself and my own, life and body.
But how it's like, even when she's saying no, and like, I think she's pleading to Tony to stop it as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
Literally, and he just like, you did like just that.
He's rolling his eyes.
He's rolling his eyes like, no, you dug this.
Right.
You dug this grave. And you live in it. It's literally, it's like horrid, because all you just want is like, yeah, it's kind of like enough is enough kind of guys. What the smack one of them, but he just goes, no, you kind of you this is what you wanted, so now you have to live it out. It's a horrid scene.
And especially because when the two friends Double J and the other guy are coming over to the car
Joey.
with her, Joey, with her and with Bobby, when they're all kind of coming back to the car because he just had the situation with Stephanie. He kind of gets a little aggravated at first and tries to take Annette away from them. And immediately the other two friends are like, no, dude, you've never cared about this girl. Like, don't start now. And she even says something, I think, along the lines of like, I'm over you now or something at this point. You can tell the whole thing is just drunken, drug-fueled choices happening. And he kind of has that moment of like his two friends kind of pin him up against the car. Like, dude, what are you doing? You've never wanted this girl. Like, and they even say like everybody gets a turn. So like they're insinuating exactly what's about to happen.
Yep.
Because she's obviously agreed to it with them because this is her plan for revenge. And then so Tony did at one point try to take her from the situation. Now, whether it was him being chivalrous and wanted to keep her from doing something stupid versus just being full of, that jealousy of the situation, because that's the girl who always stalks him. She has, although he doesn't like her, he does like that kind of situation they have going on. So I would venture to guess it was more of that than out of protection of her. But then when the time comes for that, he's like, no, I'm not stopping this.
I think it's probably a bit of both, and probably that is like when we said, I think you said it's sloppy seconds, is like they know, like he knows what his mates are like from the girls he doesn't go with, and they do. So like there's a little bit of that.
No, definitely. Yeah. So, and I think by that point, and when they're in the car and she's kind of looking at him, saying the no, in terms of trying to cry for help from him, that's when he's just like, no, like, I'm done. You wanted to do this. This is your revenge. Enjoy your revenge. It's a really tough scene, man. It's a tough one to watch.
Yeah, because even after that finishes, did we get the Bobby's scene straight away?
Yep, straight away.
Yep. So we go right to the bridge from there. The three guys get out and stop messing around on the bridge. He's left in the car with her, where she's kind of just like sobbing and crying, and he's just like, "Well, are you happy?
Yeah.
Now you're officially." I'll leave it to Stasis because in your culture, it's more easy to say.
That's Londoners can say it better.
I know you guys in the UK say it, so I'll let you do it.
But that's what he said. So that's he treats these women, doesn't he?
Right.
It's like that disdain of like it's kind of like there you go, you've joined the club.
Yep.
You've joined the club.
Congratulations.
That's it. Well done.
No
well
coming
done.
back. There's no coming back. You're now branded.
Right. And in that point,
it's not even like, are you okay? She's blatantly still in distress of what this, like we call it is a rape kind of scene.
Yeah,
and it is kind of like that. And
I mean, the first one she kind of agrees to, but the second one is like clearly, it's just.
And she runs out of the car and says, kind of leans over the bridge, like maybe she wants to take her own life.
Yeah, she's like last moment because she now knows. I think at that point she knows she's got no, like, her dream of that. Even if it was like 1% of I might get Tony one day, that's gonna happen. I've got that. That is gone. It's completely totally gone. He's literally like, no, you've done that. I'm disgusted by
exactly.
You. And he just plays like that whole scene back on her to make her feel like she was the one in the wrong. Like, you are one of them now. You're one of those women, just flaunts it about, just to get close to me. You've just did that. So like a disdain. It's again just showing that the moral compass. I think we've said this multiple times, but it is of Tony, where he's just what a twat. And it's just like
the girl's crying. Do you have to make it worse for? Obviously, she knows she just made a mistake. Like, you have
just
to
that literally. I'm just gonna twist it a little bit more. That
And again, that goes to that immaturity of somebody at that age, 19, early 19, 20, 21-year-old kind of age group, where you do act very immature, very about yourself in that way. And he just, especially when you feel like somebody's kind of wronged you in terms of relationship stuff like that. I mean, geez, there's a line in one of the Harry Potter movies. I can't remember which one it is. It's God, it's slipping my mind right now. But there's one where Dumbledore essentially says, to be young and feel love's keen sting. And I always loved it because it's so true, because the sting of love when you're younger, just there's nothing quite like it, because it's not really love. It's just the idea of like, your infatuations or your crushes or things just not going the way you want them to. And it hurts. And you think it's the end of the world, the whole thing. So this is an example of, I think, that kind of mentality of like, when you are young, you get very so possessive, very emotional, very like it's end all be all type of stuff. So when she makes this choice and Tony's just like, are you happy now? Like, now congratulations, you're one of them. It cuts her so deep and so much deeper, I think, than because she doesn't get out of the car to attempt to run to the edge of the bridge until he says that. So she's unhappy with what just happened and all that, which was bad enough as it was, but was when she felt that sting of her love of the love she has for Tony coming to go right back in her face and realizing like, crap, now it's over. I'll never get this guy. She's ready to just go to the over the top thing of like, well, I'm going off the edge of this bridge then.
Mm-hmm. And Bobby's in the car and he's realizing he's been driving these, I almost said the word, these a-holes around probably since he was old enough to get a car. Maybe he has a car because maybe he got a better job than the rest of them did, or something that he did good, that now he's the chauffeur, and they dump on him and they dump everything on him, and he's done something stupid and gotten his girlfriend pregnant, and no one will talk to him. Now, I'm just going to pause it right there for a sec and say, I think Bobby's just a horrible person like the rest of them, because how do you get yourself so wound up? I know it's, I can imagine, to be a young boy, maybe 16, 17, maybe he's younger than them, and have a girl pregnant and being told, not just have a girl pregnant, but being told you have to marry her. I think that's the part that is bothering him. It's not the pregnant, it's I have to marry her. I don't want to marry her. But what a horrible person you are. Get over it.
Right. Well, and he creates such like a diamond absolute situation for himself. Yes. It's either I marry her or she has, an abortion, or that's it. Those are the two options. There's no in between. There's no nothing. Like, so he creates this added pressure on himself with making it this absolute scenario of it's got to be this extreme or the other. And it's like, at the same time, it's like, well, like, like you said, like, get over it. You have to marry if you have to marry, because I guess nobody really has. And that culture, maybe I'm assuming he might be Italian American in that situation too. So maybe, that's good. Second choice is going to be more frowned upon, especially if you're Italian Catholic, all that. But in general, that way of not processing the options is crazy.
I think as well, it's one of the girls Tony discarded. And I think he still, that's why he goes to Tony first of all, to kind of go, just go with her, be the honorable man, and he would have gone, oh, great, thank you. I think he would have then married her. I think he wanted that kind of say, though. I think because it's the sloppy seconds, the person he cares about isn't the girl, it's the recognition, the acceptance from Tony. It's like that because it was one of, again, it's like what they do with Annette. It's probably not to the bright extreme, but it's that, oh, she didn't want him, so we're just gonna have a bit of fun with her, kind of like that. And he had, whatever girl it was had that. So it's
well, and one thing too to point out with the him and Annette part in this scene is, so right after he, makes that sting feel a little bit worse by dumping on her with the idea of like, now you're one of them, essentially saying, now congratulations, you'll never be with me now. Even I always say anybody who holds themselves as a punishment, or their like presence in someone's life as a punishment, is typically a bad person. It's not a very good behavior to say, to use your own presence in somebody's life as like, a point of punishment. So the fact that he's even doing that just goes to show how self-involved he is. But immediately after that, when she gets out of the car and starts going to the edge of the bridge, he follows her right out and is like, all right, come on, stop. Like, let's not go this far with it. And she quickly breaks down into like, she keeps saying, I didn't mean it. So, the initial decision to do what she did came from being inebriated, drunk, drugs, the whole thing. And just that pissed off feeling of having watched, the alleged love of her life dance with the person that he ditched her for in that competition. And then on top of it, win it. Now, does she know the way he walked out of there and given the trophy to the other two? Probably not. But as far as last thing she saw, it was the girl who took your spot with the guy you love winning the competition. So she's just creating this plan of revenge.
And she's got this weird, plan, like, I'm going to get my own back.
Right.
Of what? Right. There's nothing to get back.
There's nothing.
And that's the thing. It's I think she, in a way, how she's portrayed, she kind of lives in this, I suppose, dream state of they are in a relationship, even though they're not.
So.
Yeah.
We are boy in her mind. This is my boy. This is my boyfriend.
Even if we're not, we're on track to be type of thing.
Yeah, he'll wake up one day and we'll settle down, and then it'll be official. But now he's having his fun. I can't just take him away from what he wants, and it's like that. And she's got no nerve in her bone to say, just step back. But that's again,
Right.
they probably all live
Yeah.
on the same street. They've
Oh, I'm
all, that's the
sure. They
same.
see
It's
each other every
probably
Yeah,
day.
you got to
like
imagine they've all grown up together to some
They all
yeah.
had
degree.
to
Even
grow
if
up
they're not
together.
the same year, they've like even maybe not the same school, but they live across the road. That's all they
Right,
do.
right.
They're probably, you know, like they all go to church. They're all the same kind of like Catholic, you know, one church. That's all they go to. It's the same circle of the mums all know each other. It's literally, yeah. It's the best bit is like a little, like I know where they are is bigger, but it's like that village mentality. Everybody knows
It
each
is.
other, and
Yeah.
they like that kind of thing.
Neighborhood, you know, we would call
Yeah,
it the neighborhood.
yeah,
You would have a stretch of 3 or 4 blocks, you know, I even in Bal you know, I grew up in Baltimore. You'd have 3 or 4 blocks that were very close to each other. You
mm,
knew everyone. You did. You went to school with them, you went out with them, you know, you were fated to marry them, you know, but it just and I'm glad you said, you know, you got the impression that she had this in her mind that they were because I think that's what the article also portrayed is that she's been living in a little bit of a dream world,
mm,
you know, as you described. It's exactly what's described in the book where she would go to the club every night, not talk to anyone, not dance with anyone, look at him, stare at him, because in her mind she was dancing with him.
yeah.
In her mind she was with him. Um, I also think it doesn't matter whether he was dancing with her or Stephanie, he was gonna win. They were gonna win together
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
he couldn't lose because he was the face of the club. So, you know, it's at this point, Bobby's looking around him and he's at they're all at rock bottom. And
Mhm.
Bobby's, you know, there's no hope for him. What just happened in my car? And what are these who are these idiots? But these idiots are the only idiots I have.
Mhm.
And they won't talk to me. And Tony, the man I look up to, the guy I fawn around like a puppy, he wouldn't call me. He said he'd call me. He didn't call me. Why didn't
Mhm.
you call me? I don't want to marry this girl. What do you think? I want to marry her? I don't want to marry her. He's distraught. He's out of his mind. He decides he's just going to jump up and he climbs up the cables and says, "Look at me, Tony. Look at
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
Somebody pay attention to me."
And specifically Tony again here.
Mhm.
He's not saying guys look at me, you know, because on the other scenes with the guys going to the bridge after they're drinking all these Saturday nights, they mess around on the edge of the bridge. But the parts that are quote unquote safe, you know, they've kind of obviously done this before. They know where to kind of do it to still be safe and not have to worry about falling. And he always sits in the car every time. I think I only did it once and earlier in the movie, but he sits in the car. He doesn't get out. He's just kind of like, "Oh, you stupid idiots! Like, you know, it's dangerous." Blah blah
Mm,
blah. As he kind of talks to himself while still being in the front, the driver's seat. He never gets out. So immediately in this scene, he gets out with the rest of the guys, which was like, "Oh, it's interesting." And then he hops onto the more dangerous part of the bridge, the part that they
Yeah,
don't even
the
hang out on
outside.
to fool
Mhm.
around on. And they're kind of like, "Whoa, dude, like come back." And he's immediately just Tony, Tony, look at me, look at me. And at first it seems like he's just drunk and enjoying himself, where he's like, you know, swinging on the cables and all that. But then he starts to get a little bit more dangerous. And as he's getting more dangerous, and Tony's kind of now inching his way out there, and I think Double J is coming from the other side to try to get behind him, so they can try to ascend. They can tell something's off with him. It's not just he's having the fun on the bridge that they usually have. So he's having this conversation. At first, it's look at me, Tony, look what I'm doing. And then it quickly morphs into what Sandy was just saying, look at me, like acknowledge me. Why didn't you talk to me? So it starts off with, I think, him trying to show off to Tony. And then it just morphs into his horrible depressive state just coming out and becoming more of a like, why the hell didn't you call me? You said you were going to call. Why didn't you call me? And it takes a total turn in terms of tone of what the guys do on the side of the bridge there.
mm.
I
And
think
I'm
he's
just going to
reckless.
break
Oh, go
you
ahead.
just quickly.
Oh, breaking news.
Ickle Pickle,
Oh my
5
God,
gifted
Tim.
membership, and you're one of them.
Oh, nice. Thank you,
But
Tim.
Abe, the worst thing
Hey,
and Abe got one. Ickle Pickle, you're gifted yourself.
it happens. I think I
And
did on your
That is
stream
a
too.
great group of people right there. That is a great 5
absolutely.
people.
Yeah, that is.
Highlander,
Well, you
Steven.
can't count yourself as one of the great. That's a bit.
Well, you know.
Pat myself on the back. But thank you very much for the gifted membership. Thank you. That's much appreciated.
Unlike the horrid characters we're describing, we are
Yeah.
good people here. We
I know.
are
In
good people.
comparison, geez, we're some of the best.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
No.
Now, here's there's the question of did he mean So we ask the question first. We, as the audience, ask ourselves the question: okay, did he mean to self-delete, or was it an accident? And at that point, I believe he threw himself into recklessness, not caring the outcome, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And later,
yeah, I think. Sorry, just quickly. I think that
yeah,
that point it was very like, if they don't stop me, if it happens, it happens.
Yes.
But I
Yep.
want
I agree
them
with
to
both of you.
reach out and go, "You're my friend.
Right.
Don't
Yep.
do this." And they don't literally like. Will they put themselves in not mortal danger, but a slightly danger to kind of go pulling back because there was opportunities. There's
it's in their
opportunities
hands
there.
to stop
Yeah.
it, right? Later, the police ask if he was intending to self-delete, and Tony said, "There's ways of killing yourself without really killing
Yeah.
yourself," meaning exactly what I think we thought, was that
Right.
he was throwing himself with reckless abandon, and if his friends pulled him back, great, and if they didn't pull him back, well, then nothing matters anyway. And his end was probably the only ending there was gonna be, but again, n not because of any kind of desperation that I have any sympathy for, because he couldn't deal with his girlfriend, etcetera, being, or friend, girlfriend, acquaintance, being pregnant. That's not, it's a life-changing event,
Right.
not the end of the world that you've made it out to be, you immature, I'll use the word that my Brit friends use, you immature git. Like,
But I think that spurs on to what Joey and Double J, that how they treat him is like, you idiot, look what
yeah,
you did. We've had sex all like with all these off cuts of women, and we've never got one pregnant. Look at that. It probably was his first time, you know,
bet,
like at the end,
probably.
bet it
yeah,
was.
and look at you, you know, you idiot, absolute brat, and then now you
Right.
have to, like, you know, we don't care, just do what you need to do, and it's just, yeah, it's just that kind of like him. I don't. Yeah, he's messed up. He's probably got a really bad background of like friends, like sorry, family,
Probably
background. But
abused,
also, he just
Mhm.
wanted that friend. If it wasn't Tony, like Joey to man up, Double J, they're the two biggest idiots in this whole thing.
Oh,
And
for
you know,
sure.
but
Breaking news.
that segues into another idiot, and a very great, beautiful, bald idiot. We call him a hobbit, Tom B. Thank you very much. And we're at 5 gifted memberships as well. There's
Cheers.
Steve, got it. Oh, Daily Dysfunction. There you go.
Daily,
Abe
yeah.
and Daily Dysfunction had to get one together. Atomic Grey, Ultra Sigmund Dude, and Galadorn. There you go. So thank you very
All the
much.
green,
Zombie.
all the greens.
I
Yeah,
know
it's
you
all the
love to see
greens. I say like that. I think I've had it once, but everybody was green in chat. And it was kind of satisfying.
I'm
Nice.
sure. I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Zombie.
So
I think
one of the things I see with Bobby at this point too is I know the catalyst of kind of his turmoil is the pregnancy and is it marriage or is it abortion? But I do think, and as much as I do think that drives him into a state of, inner turmoil, depression, whatever, whichever way you want to define it, I do think it's honestly more of the people in his life not respecting him, not caring about him, not giving him the time of day that
Yep.
pushes him more and more towards feeling like that reckless, that bridge scene where it is the reckless, like, I'm putting myself out here. If they save me, they save me. They save me. If they don't, whatever happens, happens. I actually think it's probably a little bit more towards his relationship with everybody else in his life than it even is the pregnancy
Mhm.
situation at that point, because
Yeah.
you see that, even with the priest kind of Father Frank in the club kind of not really giving him the answers he wants type of things and not really being willing to go into it as much as that, because he is trying to leave his own past behind him with the priesthood and all that at that point. So again, I think it's just like, well, my family doesn't help me. A priest wouldn't help me. The neighborhood priest that I do go to is just telling me to marry, which isn't what I want to do. And then on top of that, your friends aren't listening to you. They're not giving you the time of day, especially the one you idolize the most. I think that just then creates this way about him and then on top of that, feeling like the coward who didn't have his friends back. I think there's a lot that goes into him finally getting onto the edge of that bridge and just giving that, whatever happens thing. And And because even in that last bit of dialogue he has, it's Tony, why didn't you call me? It's not, again, it's
Yeah.
not even about the pregnancy at that point. It's, why didn't you call me? You said you were going to call me. Why didn't you call me? So it's still so tied into just his lack of self-esteem from everybody in his life, just kind of pushing him down, which you feel bad for. But again, there's a lot of times where it's, not the highest IQ, but there is a little bit of like, get some self-worth, find a better group of friends. Tony, it's the journey Tony's on in this movie to find a better situation for himself, because he's slowly realizing his. So you would have liked to see other characters do the same.
Yeah, but it's even
Bobby
when like
and Nat.
the police turn up, and like blatantly it's been a couple of hours. Like it must be the recovery's body. But they just don't give a shit.
Yeah,
There's
you
like that
hear
kind of
one of
thing.
them
They're
like, wrap it up.
yeah.
We're not going to find anything
Yeah.
tonight, and it's like, damn.
Yeah, it's just like, let's go, and they're like, they just things, and then the next is kind of the ending scene, back with Tony, going to Stephanie, and it's just it's a bit of an odd scene. The end scene, I must say.
You feel you see him walk away from his friends trying to give him the ride, which is kind of that visual of like he's putting these guys behind him type of thing.
I think so.
Yeah.
And
but then I think when
go ahead.
when he goes to Stephanie, I think that he's like, I've got to change something. But then he just goes back to the person that's been like using him, manipulating him, like all the way through the whole thing.
For both of them, so think about where she was left, having been nearly assaulted by him, and then that maybe that was a wake up moment for her, and having your friend fall off a bridge to his death was hopefully a shocking wake up. I feel like this is the point in the film where they have both understood their own characters. They know themselves at this point. She's in her brownstone, but a pretty hollow person. He's got no friends, but she's the closest to a decent person that he has. And maybe she's someone who can listen to him. And that's why in that conversation, they say friends. Right. Can we be friends? Because they both need somebody. They need somebody. But I think they realize the content of their character has to change. This is not a way to live.
Right. It's almost like in searching for a life that betters them, they want a little bit of comfortable, a comfortable nature with some friends who are real people, not these fake, superficial type of relationships she's been making with trying to progress her career, or the one he's had with a bunch of yes men always propping him up all the time. They both kind of want some real relationship, even if it is just friends, to help them kind of get to this next stage of finding what they want out of, moving to Manhattan, or because he's talking about moving to Manhattan, finding a job and all that. It's almost like while they're both searching for that new life for themselves in an unfamiliar place, it's that little bit of comfort, one from being two similar people, because she is very similar to Tony in terms of where she comes from and putting on an act. It's just a different kind of act. So that familiarity with the two and that comfort level of like a friend that, we're essentially two fish out of water. So why don't we pair up as fish who know where we came from type of thing.
Phew. So for some, the ending is quite unfulfilling because it is abrupt. Yeah, it is. It's abrupt.
It caught me off guard this time.
There's a nice song. There's another #1 song. There's again, I think it comes down to the character. But what people took out of this film, again, probably on first viewing and maybe on future viewings, they thought differently, was obviously the music. And people not only saw this film, they went back and saw it over and over and over again. This film was made for $3.5 million in 1977. That's $18.8 million today. It made an equivalent of $1.5 billion at the box office.
Wow.
At the time, the most successful R-rated movie. At the time, the most successful movie of all time. I mean, it just went on and on and on, all the accolades, and then of course the soundtrack. people went back over and over again. And I would think on a rewatch, then they would start to pay attention to the film because the music is overwhelming. The music goes through this entire film. It's not an opera because they're not singing, but the music doesn't stop. The Grammy Award, it did not win any Oscars, surprisingly. And I have to look up what was the Oscar song of the year or album of the year.
Yeah, I'd love to know that.
I didn't look that up, but it did win it swept the Grammys both in 1977 and 1978. There were so many because some of the songs were, the singles were released sequentially. So there were some songs that were honored in 1977 and some in 1978. There was Grammy.
I looked. This went up into the Oscars in 1978, so it went with all the kind of big guns, and so it's probably going to get diluted.
Was this 1978's Oscars? I just did 77. Yeah, I was going to say 77.
This was released in 77. It went up in 78. So that was Annie Hall, one big. Star Wars, of course, was up there.
Yeah,
so so for that 77 era, like that, it was a good for the box office, I'm guessing, all around. But that's why everybody's like, you had some ones. It was weird, a couple of weird years in the Oscars. I think they went with that 70s vibe of like, it's not like a very dark story driven things like that. Like, and is Annie Hall, isn't it? Like that is
that's true.
Woody
Allen.
Yeah, like one best picture. It's one of those ones. So it was that, like, he was up. I had to look it up. He was actually nominated for best lead. I think he was the only actor up there, but I think we said that before. I think Sandy said that none of them really did anything really substantial after this, really. So him. Yeah.
So just for the sake of knowing and just coincidence, the best original song for Oscars 1978 was actually "Hopelessly Devoted to You" from Grease.
From Grease.
Go figure. It would be another John Travolta.
What are you gonna do?
Music heavy movie.
Competing against yourself there. The Grammys later also recognized the achievement by putting the album in the Grammy Hall of Fame. For all of the achievements. And I went over, some of the, I kind of went down the list of the 17 songs and all of the rankings on the Billboard list. That's based on the United States. But of course, the album, the soundtrack were huge hits all over the world, all around the world. The impact of this film, was kind of mocked and ridiculed as disco only really survived, I think, for 4 or 5 years, really, right? Because you had the Bee Gees version of disco versus the Motown evolution into disco versus ABBA, the more international, music that evolved into the pop music that we have today, really and truly. You got the rock and roll track and then the pop, poppy disco-y track. But for all the ridicule of the music, the dance, the disco balls, if you can just listen to the soundtrack without getting mired in the darkness of the film, it's very uplifting. I put this on the other day and just cranked it up in my car. I was driving back from Philly and I listened to the whole soundtrack and it was fantastic. And it's great to get up and move. And I can't believe that the Bee Gees wrote the songs after the dances were filmed. I think that is just tremendous. Now, sadly, this film, which I do adore, as you can tell, was followed up by the absolute worst sequel in in film history. And there was a sequel made called Staying Alive.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
It was made and written and produced by Frank Stallone, because both Sylvester Stallone and Frank Stallone loved Saturday Night Fever. And Frank Stallone wrote and produced Staying Alive, which was Tony actually going to Broadway. It is horrendously bad. It is
just off the Broadway side of it. I'm like, does it really sound good?
Yeah.
feel like he
It's
belongs
the
in a disco club.
It is. It's the film with the longest rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
I think it's a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's universally panned. It's terrible. It had one song that actually did make it to number 1 by Frank Stallone called "Far From Over."
Mhm.
Don't look it up. Uh, but this film did not need a sequel, and I think people have
Yeah.
erased the sequel from their brains, thankfully, so that they can appreciate this film for what it is, and
Mhm.
for me, it is a slice of life being filmed in the years that it portrays. It's a wonderful historical, um, you know, uh, snapshot, portrait of
Mhm.
life at that time, hopefully not with such horrendous people
Mhm.
surrounding, the typical Brooklanders of
Mhm.
that day. But for me, I know we do numerical ratings. This is a solid 8 for me.
Mhm.
My purview is always leaning toward something that, by the way, in the film, you know, needless to say, there's no CGI in this film, right? So we don't
Yeah.
have to, worry
Mhm.
about that. But for this film, I would say, being shot on site, on
Mhm.
location, in the real locations where people, where people danced, using extras who were real dancers. Um, for all of those reasons, I do enjoy this film. So I know I was the one to recommend this film, so I'm really interested in hearing about your conclusions, both of you,
Mhm.
on what were your preconceptions? How did you feel after watching the film, and where will it rank now in your personal ranking of films?
Go on, Jay. I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So for my first ever watching of it, it was probably when I was in high school, so it was quite a few years ago. Based off that, coming into this, I probably would have given the movie about a 6.5. But now rewatching it this past week with a different kind of perspective of film in general, I'd probably say it was a solid 7 for me. So it definitely went up. Generally speaking, I really enjoy it. I think it's a good film. I think everybody should watch it. Like you said, the soundtrack's phenomenal. The cinematography is really good. The tone of the era, I think they capture, late 70s, mid to late 70s disco era New York, Brooklyn very well. I think a bit of dialogue and acting amongst some of the other characters is where I probably faulted a little bit. I think John Travolta did a really good job. There's outside of that first scene, once you start letting him get into his Tony, I think he does really well in the role. I stopped seeing John Travolta and I start seeing the character outside after that first, probably the hardware scene when he does the whole paint thing with his mother there. Now that we find out it was her, I thought he did good. I thought he lost. You lose the face into the role, which is always a good thing when you have such a recognizable face like an actor like him. So I'd probably give it about a solid 7. I really liked it. I liked it more this second time through, and I would definitely recommend it.
James, what say you?
Okay. I remember watching this and I'm guessing it's going to be one of those movies that I didn't remember because I kind of didn't like it. Now watching it a second time, I still don't like this movie. I must
Really?
say, I don't like it. I love the cinematography. I love how it's shot, and I like parts of the story, but I don't like the movie. That's I don't know what it is. I just find it where like you have that kind of I don't mind films where you have that kind of characters that you don't like anyone. There's nobody really that you're gonna
Fair.
like in this movie.
Mhm.
And it just feels a bit disjointed where you kind of want like Frank's character, you kind of get in touch with, and then he's just gone. There's
Mhm.
that kind of nuance to it. Like I say, I'm going to put my hands up. I don't like disco. Does the music affect my take on the movie? No, because it plays into every
Mhm.
part of the scene. I just can't click with this movie, and I don't know
Mhm.
what it is. I just
Mhm.
I don't know if it's because I don't know because the disco scene in Britain wasn't so much, or what I was growing up with and what I was liking. But when I look at this, I'm just disjointed to it. I just can't it's not about relating to the characters, because nobody
Mm.
can relate to these characters because they're so
Fair enough.
They're
so
horrible.
horrid, horrible. But like, it's just not my movie. It is like, I must have, when I watched it, I was like, I didn't like it, and then moved on. This second time, it was like, I must say, I was like, I'm really not enjoying it, and I kind of got how it was like that kind of story I should like, and I like the ending. My girlfriend hated it because I like those abrupt endings where you have to kind of make up your mind to it. I just didn't like, so I'm going to be a bit harsh, and I'm going to give it a 5.
Fair
So
point.
that's, yeah, but that is only because I can understand that if you're more, I suppose, American, because you get more of the kind of thing, like the situation about the families and how, like, that, the immigrants and all that, where it's completely different. So we have to pick up of what we see, I suppose, like that. And I just don't think it was driven to like that, how the family to the to Tony's, like, things like, and like, I hate to say it, like, it breaks into like the most iconic bits about this movie aren't the iconic bits you should be talking about, because it's about the dancing, the walking, the strutting, you know, all that. But the darker bits is the story. You take out, if you take out the disco part, this is a very horrible story, a really harsh story. If you take out that, like, Tony can dance, and then just did it like I remember the movie Sleepers, just about like a set of friends and it all goes awry. If they just did it about, you know, like, they sit on the kind of the in the streets, they don't do anything, just having a cigarette or whatever, or fag, we like to call it in the UK, and they're just doing that. They haven't got that disco movie, and they did it about that. This would be a really disturbing, dark, like, things, but having that uplift of the, you know, that light, the lights and all that, and all the iconic shots that you get. Yeah, it's I think like Jay said earlier, you remember the movie being a bit more lighter, like in how visual it is, but it's not. It's all night. Like, there's most of it's all nighttime. It's very dark. It's very gritty. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Would I watch it again? I very much doubt it. Unfortunately, it's just not my cup of tea.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
One thing I actually would like to touch on there that you brought up was the Frank character, which I forgot to talk about when we were discussing him. I actually liked how he kind of left in such an abrupt way, because the way I kind of took his whole appearance in the film was, obviously, he leaves the church, comes home, the family's all distraught, yada, yada. But then it seems like for a second there, he wants to maybe stick around, kind of get back in touch with his brother, all this stuff, and they go out to the club. And at first, Frank's kind of like wide-eyed, smiling, in terms of like eyes, you know, his eyes are wide open, like taking it in, is like, oh my God, this is like, what is this world that I'm in? And then he's smiling ear to ear on his way in, kind of in awe of everything. So he's got that wide-eyed, bushy-tailed type of, you know, reaction to being in this club. But then it's as he sees his brother dancing, he's again just like, kind of just like, wow, he's really good. Like, you guys didn't tell me he was this good. And then he has that conversation with Bobby, which I think jars him so much in terms of what the world that all these guys are living in really is, compared to the world that he's leaving. And it, you know, as much as he wants to put the priesthood and the church behind him, he's also not quite ready to adjust to this style of living, which, well, you know, this nightlife, the dancing, he's seen these guys do drugs all around him. And then it comes to this questions from Bobby of this extreme scenario where he's just like, dude, what the hell? So he goes from being really excited to be in that club to like, all right, Tony, I'm going to leave, like, immediately, just out of nowhere has to leave.
I don't belong.
I think he gets really jarred by it. And then the next time we see him, he's kind of like, all right, I got to get out of here. Throwing his, you know, bags in the back of the taxi and all that.
Yeah, it's going to like a home or something.
Yeah, and he says it's like, well, you know, it's tough with the neighbors all know my situation, and it's tough for the families. It's best for me to move. But really, I think it was just he realized this is not the world I belong in. I may not belong in the church anymore, but I don't belong here either. So I just got to kind of get out of here and figure out what my thing is. So I actually liked the way he was kind of in and out. At first, it kind of caught me off too, is like, this guy just kind of breezed through the movie and then was out of here. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I actually kind of like what they did there to a degree.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I took it.
Yeah. But as I say, I liked how it was set up, like every like the characters they are and how it was written. I liked it. I just don't like it.
No, fair enough.
Just-
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
There was
Oh.
actually one more thing artistically that I'd love to point out. So the bridge stuff, right? I don't know if any of you guys thought this either. The first time they go to the bridge, you kind of just like, I don't know, seems out of place, like like a weird place to hang out, and like they just almost kind of forced this scene of them hanging out on the side of it and doing that prank. So it kind of stood out to me as like, well, that seemed weird, misplaced, like whatever. You move on with the story and you don't see the bridge again for a little while. But then in that scene where he drops her off at the apartment, they go through the whole thing where he finds out she's essentially been sleeping her way to the position that she's in at work and in Manhattan and all that. And they're driving back and they go, he says, oh, we're going to pull over, we're going to stop. And then they stop to, let her cry and talk it out a little bit. And they sit on a bench overlooking the bridge. And then all of a sudden he starts talking about all these facts about the bridge. And again, at first I'm like, what is the deal with this bridge in this movie? Like, I don't get why there's such an obsession. Yeah. And that's exactly, he starts giving all these stats and he says, I know everything about that bridge. And to me, at first, I'm like, I don't understand the meaning of this bridge. And then even when you get the last scene when Bobby falls off of it, and I'm like, still, again, so much of this movie is centered around this bridge without it being in every scene. And it kind of finally hit me in that when I was thinking about the spot where he says, I know everything about this bridge, I took that as kind of the directors or writers, one of the two's artistic way of showing that this bridge represents kind of the path from where he's stuck to where he wants to be over in Manhattan.
Yeah, 100%. That's
so he is just entirely obsessed with it to the point where he knows all these random crazy facts that most people wouldn't know about. You especially wouldn't expect somebody who spends his nights dancing and practicing dancing in his days, at a hardware store. You wouldn't think he'd be obsessed with this bridge, but it's his focal point because to him it represents that's the distance between me and where I want to be, and don't quite know how to get there, but I'm going to try to know as much as I can about the path to get there. It's
a different. That across there's a new life.
Right,
really.
Right.
That's what
it's the
but like he's stuck. He can't go that far. He can't make that leap.
And it's like, and every time his friends go on there, they only go so far and they play on it. It's like they're teetering on the idea of one day we'll cross it, we'll get there. But the most we can do is be stuck on our side of it, messing around, screwing around until we figure out what it is. I, again, thought it was so weird that they would just be hanging out on a bridge until it finally hit me. I'm like, oh, I think I see what they're doing with this from an artistic standpoint, which I thought was nice. And then it represents the death point of his friend Bobby, which is like, well, geez, that was a twist I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I said earlier I liked how the cinematography, and Aid said, did anybody notice how oddly the shots were framed? But they do it in every other character except for the main ones. You look at the when the mum gets shot, the father gets shot, everybody, even the shopkeeper, they are all shot differently than the disco guys. They are all shot differently. So it is, I like how they did that. If you go back and actually like see it, like how they framed it, like they are framed in the scene, they are slightly different. Like they're not supposed to be there, and then you get the disco guys, kind of like that, the group of friends. It is quite clever, and I like that. That is quite a clever bit. They like everybody else is like, you're not supposed to be in this world, but you're here. You're in the movie, but you're not in the world that we are. Right. Everybody else is
right, because it's based off Tony's world, and the center of Tony's world is the disco, the scene, him and his friends. It's not the family, it's not the work. So, I thought that was really clever. And to Sandy's point earlier, I thought the way that they shot the dancing scenes were really nice, especially his solo, which was a one take. But there's other spots too where they're kind of these couples or these dancers are zipping around the dance floor, like really eating up the whole dance floor as they're going, and you're not seeing cameras like in the way, like the way they film it was the only time I caught one instance of, oh, I can tell that's where the camera was there's one part where they're going from this down a view from the camera being on the ground looking up at two of the dancers, almost kind of looking up at their legs. And one of the guy dancers kind of has to do a hop over the camera, and you can see him kind of glance down at it really quickly to make sure he doesn't jump into it, but then he jumps over it.
Oh, you're right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like him and another woman are dancing, and there's this little move he does where he's got to kind of hop over it. So really quickly, he looks down at it to make sure he's not going to hit it, and then makes his leap over it. Which I was like, damn, for a movie that's getting the camera this up and close and personal to these dancers whipping around the dance floor, they did a great job at keeping them out of the way and keeping them out of, being visible or anything like that.
I think
what so. What was the budget again, Sandy? What was the
$3.8 million?
That actually strikes me as quite a bit for the 70s. For this film too. I wouldn't have thought this film would have that much
So in today,
To
let me
it.
go. I'm not going to put it back on the screen, but let me
Yeah,
see
yeah.
what that was in today's dollars. So it'd be 18 million today.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems like
Yeah,
a lot
so
for a
you
movie
get-
like this because it's all practical. You know, it's like you said, it's on location.
Yeah.
It's not like they're building sets using CGI. So it actually strikes
because
me as a little
you've
odd.
got a very dingy club. You've got a couple of outdoor scenes.
Mhm.
A lot of the kind around the bridge were probably all done in a day.
Right. And I
and
can't
then
imagine
you've
the
got-
acting budget
and
was
then
much
you've
because it's no
got
names.
and then you've
Minus
got
John.
the indoor kind of scenes are probably the ones around are probably the same home. It's just like it's just like
Mhm.
how they set it up. So
Yeah.
it's maybe a bit expensive,
Interesting.
but
I mean, they made the money back, so fair enough
Yeah.
there.
They
But
made the money
yeah,
back.
exactly.
it's interesting to think that would have cost about 3.8 million.
Mm,
They did. They made
But-
100-fold,
there you
100-fold
go.
on this
Mm-hmm.
movie. Film.
Mm.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you because this was my selection. I enjoy hearing your takes on it. And I'm glad that it forced a rewatch for some of it. And I think we all saw something different
Mhm.
on a rewatch. And that's why Film Club is so cool. So I hope some of the folks in chat, I already know, I know Abe did a watch, and I think Ickle Pickle did a watch. So
Mhm.
hope some of the folks in chat also took a look at this film. James, what's next for Film Club?
Well, next is we did we'll do the next one, but so next time it is something that Jay's not seen.
Yes,
And
this is the first one that I haven't seen.
The Great Escape.
Well, actually,
I'm
no, I
looking
haven't seen
forward
Noah's
to it.
Crossing.
Yeah, so that's it. So the Great Escape is the next one, but shall we spin the wheel for the next one? Now we have to do this because if I always say if Lord of the Rings comes up, Sandy's got a lot of reading to do.
You have to give her a month in advance.
So let's just put it this way: for Lord of the Rings, because I've read it before, I'll give myself the shortcut.
Okay.
But there
Fair
are
enough.
a few other films on this list that I have not read the books for, and I know the books are huge. So
Mhm.
there are a few that, I'll be a little worried about. The Great Escape, I have the book here. It's not too devastating.
Mhm.
Okay. But
And there's some other material for the Great Escape as well. So there's probably 3 or 4 other articles I want to read as well.
so we've
Now,
got all
very-
these,
Very quickly before we do the spin, I would like to ask, because I think this will be an interesting one to hear, mostly from Stasis's perspective, because I think Sandy and I would both say this is a recommend for a movie. Stasis, do you recommend it, even based off just its kind of iconic history and iconic perspective from most, even though you haven't liked it, or would you consider it not a recommend?
I recommend to watch. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it's recommend to watch because of the perspective in history and
Right.
how it's shot and how the story unfolds. Would I say you're gonna love it? Probably not.
Gotcha. I was interested to
Fair.
know if
It's
it
very
got
fair.
downgraded to a not recommend or not, given the
No,
not
it's still,
being too
it'll still be a recommend, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Cool.
Are we ready? Are we
Yes.
ready? Let's do it.
We're
Then.
ready.
Don't know. We don't know. It's gonna feel. I still want my one to come up. French. I still want French language one to come up. Let's have a look. Right, ready?
I'm all for it.
3.
Yeah,
That's what
I'm
Film
for it.
Club's all
Three.
about.
Yeah, but they're weird.
All right, chat.
ones.
Do you want to
Okay.
guess?
Oh, okay.
Guess before we hit the.
Are we going to go for out of us 3? Who do you think's who's it going to be? Is it going to be my
Who's it
pick,
gonna
Sandy's
be?
picks, or Jay's?
So we've had one of each so far, right? And we're now on the second
Yes.
of Stasis with Great Escape. All right, so I'm gonna go
Yes.
with a Sandy pick.
Did I put
I
Great
think it's gonna
Escape, or
be a
was it you,
Sandy.
Sandy?
I think there are quite a few that we would have both put. So
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
you
Okay.
started.
I'm going to
I
go for.
added,
I'm going to
we
go.
went
I'm
back
going to go
and
for
forth.
I'm going to go for it's a Sandy one. Okay, ready? 1,
Uh-oh.
2,
I think it's a
3,
Sandy pick.
Go.
All right, come on, Apollo 13. Let's go. That's another book, but it's not that big. Let's see I want a mystery. What is it?
Oh,
Halloween. Interesting.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Okay.
This
There
is
we
the
go.
beauty
Halloween.
of Film Club. We
Yeah, I
go
was not
from
expecting that.
There you
gangster
go.
film to gritty novel to gritty slice of life with
To
disco to
grit.
Halloween. Oh, and look.
It's a slasher gritty.
So, there we go. Halloween.
All
I
right.
haven't watched Halloween for a while. So
Oh,
now that's
God,
gonna be
it's
good.
been
I have not either.
ages. This is going to be a fun rewatch.
Ages. Oh, by the way, it is the original Halloween.
Yeah, it's not the one that
remake.
just came out,
Just
right?
before I
Correct.
died. Yeah.
Correct. The
Yeah.
original.
Oh, there we
Oh my
go.
gosh.
Oh, that's gonna be Halloween.
Abe, the
Wow.
original Abe. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the original.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, Tam has never watched it either. Well, this would be a
Never
fun one
watched
then.
it.
Wow.
There you go.
What?
They go. That's it. Ah,
Question,
you have to sit
Stasis,
down with Zombie and watch it.
Question for UK. Was the horror genre big in the UK during the time of like all these 80s horror slashers, or was it
Oh
something that
yeah, we had it. Yeah, because
Okay,
we
so
had
it's just as big as for you guys?
yeah, the Hammer. You know, it had like
Yeah.
Christopher Lee and all that before.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was more. Yeah, I suppose our one's more.
'Cause this was like, you
Like
know,
I suppose it
Freddy
was
and
like
Jason and all
low.
that.
Yeah, we had all that, but before that we had like the low budget British horrors. Like the kind of B movie, but with really good actors like that. What? Yeah, and then you kind of got. It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
I think is your birthday now?
Halloween is your birthday.
Your birthday? That's what we're saying. If it's happy birthday now, happy birthday. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, can you guys there?
Yeah, kind of happened.
All
The
right.
same way.
I was talking to myself for a few
I
minutes.
wasn't sure if it was me.
I've gone down the bottom then. Yeah, well, your avatar's gone. Don't know what happened there. The YouTube gobs went a bit weird. Yeah, but we don't do much slashers.
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering if it was a popular thing because here we've done them all. You know, from Jason to Michael Myers, Freddy, all that stuff. It's been such a big thing here.
Yeah, we don't. We do like it's more the most you would ever get is kind of a Dracula kind of vampire-esque kind of like that, but it would always be with it would be very European based, but otherwise from that I can't think of a slasher like kind of movie like until we get into like the kind of 90s kind of 2000s like that. I think they're probably the most
Texas
you're ever going to
Chainsaw?
get. Yeah, but I mean British one.
Yeah, like
you
a
mean
British
made,
creation.
okay.
Yeah, like Dog Soldiers is probably the most like that's werewolves. Have you ever seen that? It's got a good one, but otherwise than that, yeah, it's very dialogue driven than having like a slasher like that. Yeah, we don't we don't really do them, but yeah, that's interesting though. So yeah, that's we got some weird picks going on then, haven't we?
Yeah,
it's like that. We're like we have got romance, we have got comedy. It's just like that. So we've gone now to
there's animated ones in there. We've got a whole bunch of everything. It's
I did say to Sandy, I said my girlfriend made me read the list, and she was like, "You've got everything on there." I was like, "Yeah." But yeah,
the 1978 film Halloween is based on the book Halloween, written by Curtis Richards. I have a book to read.
There we go.
Perfect. So we've gone up a year. We've gone from 77 to 78. So what is a 79 movie? Maybe we're going to do
Golden
that.
age of movies, though. I mean, that's what we're going to find.
So everybody has seen Halloween here.
Yes.
So this is going to be a bit.
It's been ages since, but I've seen it.
Yeah, I actually caught the ending of it the other day, and I was just like that. I was like that. So, but this is going to be funny because my girlfriend, she's watched them and she's liked them. She doesn't like getting scared. So will she watch this? I think I like. So she, I wonder if she will actually. No, I watch it just because I like watching it with you. Like so it'd be interesting.
So I'll just as a bit of a lead into this when we do this. I am actually not a fan of horror movies, whether it be the slashers or the more modern ones that just became how gross can we make the the attacks in these movies. I've never been a big fan of them. So I haven't really gone back after I've watched one. I've usually watched it once and moved on. Like I've watched a couple of the Halloween movies, not all the million sequels that come out of it. Same for Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I've watched all the originals, but never went back to rewatch them and never watched many sequels. So I'm interested to see if watching them now, or especially watching this one now, will give me a different opinion on them.
Yeah. I suppose, I would be the same. I like the originals once you get to like Friday the 13th, part 17 or
Yeah.
whatever. You
Once
go,
I hit,
what's going on?
Once I hit Freddy versus
wasn't it?
Jason, I was out.
Yeah, like you were like, oh,
Or
come on.
Halloween
Like,
H2O and all these things.
yeah,
I'm
I
good.
probably like kind of put it on, and it was just like, yeah, that's silly. Like, you
Well-
like Critters. Everybody kind of likes Critters. I like Critters. It's funny, but then they went into Critters in space and stuff, and it's just like, you just kind of milking these movies that were kind of low budget. Like, I'm guessing Halloween
I think
is
the
a
horror
very
still
low
is.
budget. Yeah,
I think
but
horror
it's
typically
very,
is compared to the other styles of film.
yeah.
And I there was an era that I liked when I was a little bit younger, the early 2000s era of like The Ring and Darkness Falls, all these little ones that came out that were like more concept based than just like your slashers were, and they didn't quite get to these Saw movies that just became how gross can we make these traps that we're putting people in. There was that little slice of like,
I think I've only seen
of
Saw,
wax
and
and,
then
all
I
these
got bored.
others that I liked. Yeah, I saw the first two. The second one I didn't like. By the third, I was already out of the Saw franchise just because the first one I think is actually pretty good, to be honest with you.
But I always say,
it's gross,
be,
but it's a cool concept. It makes you think a little bit. Like shit, what would I do?
I always say like these are creepy, like you go like the creepy rather than slasher. But if you really want creepy, it's Japanese horrors. Oh, like the original, like Grudge, the Ring, the original.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Ring.
the American version of Grudge and Ring, right? Yeah,
yeah. But if you watch the Japanese version, you're like, oh no, I'm getting a bit freaked out.
Yeah,
it gets you. It gets you. You're like, oh no,
yeah.
That's the Japanese for some reason can do a proper good one. You're just like, it's because they go just a little bit weird, and I like that.
And
They're just not like
I'm the same way.
Yeah, so
that's the stuff that I like more than just this monster's running around and unkillable and slashing.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then the gross side of
that
the
is a very like
I like that
80s.
creepy concept of like when you think about it, you're like, oh shit, this is actually really creepy. I wouldn't want to be in this scenario.
It's the best way. Is it with the Ring, isn't it? Like if anybody like had an old phone when it first came out, like things, and then the phone rings, you just shit yourself. I answering.
That was the thing. That phone. Exactly, because you used to have the landlines at that point for the most part. So it'd be, God forbid, it rings during the movie or after the movie. You're not sleeping the rest of the night. That's what I like. Those creepy concepts more than just your Jasons, your Michael Myers, even Freddy. I thought was a bit of a creepier concept with the inside your dreams, all that. So I always liked Freddy more than I did Halloween or Friday the 13th, or Nightmare on Elm Street, rather, is where I should say, not Freddy. But I've always liked his concept of a character better than the others.
I think you always get that because you got some good ones like Evil Dead. Is it like is a parody on a horror?
Right, parody comedy.
Horror it's like it's like and but then you get ones like just what's it? Just the slasher kind of like terrible ones are like just blood and guts. They're not.
Yeah, that's the stuff that's like you're just trying to gross me out. You're not scaring me.
I don't like them. I just don't like them. Like somebody getting their head split in half with a chainsaw.
Yeah, or like opened up, reversed from the mouth. Some of the Saw traps. I'm like, dude, this is just disgusting. I'm not even scared or thrilled. This is like in terms of it being a thriller. Like it's just grossing me out. I'm getting nothing out of this.
That's it. I like a horror that leaves you not wanting to tell.
Yes,
it's true. I agree. That is it.
For sure.
It's like that. It is. You want to go down once you're like, just kind of need all the lights on, and then you go, did I check downstairs? I'm just going to go check downstairs again. And you take a baseball bat. Yeah, just going to take a baseball bat. I don't know why.
I'm going to run up this. I'm going to go down the stairs slow, but I'm going to run up them as fast as possible on the way back up. Yep.
Yeah, it's like that. Your girlfriend goes, "Oh, I forgot my water. Too bad." It's
you're gonna be thirsty tonight.
Yeah, you're gonna. No, you're not. I'm
drinking in the morning.
Yeah,
Abe, you are 100% right.
Yeah.
The best horrors show you nothing, hiding the monster, right? I mean, and it started with when that wheel hits Jaws. You all are getting a 5-hour dissertation from me on Jaws because I am an expert on Jaws and everything that created Jaws. But that was the beauty of that film. You hardly ever saw the shark, and it's the same thing with other good horror films. I give a lot of credit to the Blair Witch Project. Unfortunately, it was ripped off, and people today, I think young people today, kind of look at it as a kind of a joke, and but it was so revolutionary and filmed in the exact place where I do a lot of my archaeological work, which is kind of cool with Burkittsville. And after that film, of course, Burkittsville became the home of the Blair Witch, and the local townspeople, boy, they went with it. They created those corn dollies that were hanging from the trees, and everybody got into it. But it's the ones that show you nothing. And even I'll take a step further, not just horror films, but one of the we shan't talk about the later seasons, but one of the great things about the early seasons of Game of Thrones, the show, was that you didn't see the dragons.
Mhm. Mhm.
There were entire seasons when you didn't see the dragons, and then when you finally did see Drogon full size, it was amazing, and it's a disappointment now in House of the Dragon for me, besides some of the other stuff. One of the disappointments is you constantly see the dragons, and it was it was more of our imagination in the first few seasons of Game of Thrones to not see the dragons, and if you had read the books, you had in your imagination what they would look like, and it's the same thing with horror. Your imagination is going to go to the worst, most terrifying thing, and to not the longer you don't see the monster, the more horrible it is in your mind, and that's just such a great trick of all the best horror
Well, it's
films.
even
Mhm.
like Alien does that. Alien does it
Yes.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
well that when it
No,
actually
I
comes
agree.
out, you do not see it. Literally, you see, boom, snip, it's there, it's gone,
Yep.
and it's only till the
Mhm.
end you actually see the actual the alien, the monster, the evil
Mhm.
wolf, or whatever it's called.
But
But that's
it
literally, yeah, it's how that suspense. It's that kind
Right.
of you're playing with the audience's mind. It's
Mhm.
literally like that, and that's what like I like it. Look, we're going to talk about it, but we'll watch it again like Halloween. Is because most of it he's in the dark, he's not
Mhm.
there, and
Right.
then boom.
Well, and once you start showing it, and then you then get a segment of people who are watching the movie or TV show, whatever it is, just to see it type of thing, which kind of then changes the way it's filmed. Like, for example, Game of Thrones is, I think, a perfect example of that, which once you started seeing the dragons more and more, especially towards the later seasons, when they were running out of source material and things to write, they kind of relied on the dragon scene. So I'll never
Yes.
forget kind of having the group chat conversation after episodes where it'd be an episode that I didn't like because I would have preferred to have seen Littlefinger and what was it, Varys, have
Varys.
dialogue for an entire
Mhm.
episode and be thrilled by it than some of the just random dragons doing dragon things. And I remember after some of those episodes in those later seasons, going into the group chat with the friends the next day or just immediately after, everybody being like, dude, the dragons, the dragons. And I'm like, I don't really care about the dragons. I like the show better, honestly, in times before we were getting force fed the dragons all the time for that kind of visual awe aspect.
Yes.
So there are times, and I think you see that with a lot of some of these other horror movies where you started to see Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers more and more and more in them, where it kind of watered down the reaction of when you actually do get the chance to see snippets of them or things like that.
Well, look at Psycho is a great example
Mhm.
of a
Oh,
like a psychological
perfect.
kind of you don't like, you know, but you don't know,
Right.
and it's like it just plays with you like that. The whole the best, probably one of the best scenes in probably cinema is the shower scene.
It
It
is.
is
Mhm.
clever, that whole scene, because you don't see it, and it probably helps that it's in black and white. I must say that because it, like
Mhm.
the blood, well, the watermelon, as they did it. But it's just that creepiness. You know something's not right. What's going to happen, and then it happens, but you don't see it. But you just they're tearing down. It's clever.
Mhm.
I like that. I like horrors when they're clever.
Yeah,
So,
I think I would agree there. When they're clever, they give you something to think about, or they're just done
yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah,
I would agree there.
if it's there for like full frontal, let's just say like that, I just like
Yeah,
oh
man.
great. If I see who it is or what it is in the first 10 minutes, oh no.
Yeah.
But like difference is I never class zombie movies as horrors, really. They're in a different genre, I think. Because you know
Yeah.
what you're getting with a zombie movie. You
Right,
know what
right.
you're getting. So
It's
I
more
think they're
Yeah,
sci-fi.
slightly
that's
different.
true.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, but everybody really great. I think that was a lot of the best thing, and I hope everybody in chat is getting it when we tell you what we're watching. Hope you do your homework, because I'm
Yeah.
loving going back to movies that I haven't watched in a while. So that's
Mhm.
good. Like they're movies that you're like, oh, I haven't seen that. Like Halloween, we've all seen it, but you haven't seen it in a while. Like Great Escape, you know, where I've watched it multiple times, but I'm looking forward to watching it again. Like, you know, so there's going to be hits and misses,
Mhm.
but I hope everybody's going to enjoy, like, just not us three. Everybody in chat's going, ooh, what's this week? And then they can have a little go, we should put that on on our list that's something that you're not normally would put on. Let's just say that. I think there's a lot on our list that you go, huh, I forgot about that. I haven't seen it for a while, you know. So there's going to be some classics. There's going to be some weird ones in there. There's going to be some funny ones, some disturbing ones, things as well as like that, and some ones you probably never heard of. So you have to dig for it. But yeah, I hope everybody's had a great time today. It's been a lot of fun. I'm liking this. I'm liking it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And again, everybody, we're really sorry that Stasis was late to the stream today. Next time we will be on time. No, we had a lot of fun. This is great. I love doing this. It's getting me to watch more movies that I haven't seen before. It's getting me to rewatch ones like Stasis said. So this is really fun.
I think my missus is liking it as well because she gets like, ooh, we get to watch what movie, like a movie we're gonna watch, like something just you're not like scowling for it. So it's good, yeah. But go around. Sandy, you up to Embassy still?
I am. I still have, despite the fact that I have posted over 200 shorts of embassies, residences, and other foreign missions, I still have over 70 to go. Wow. So yeah, I'm still tooling around Washington, D.C. I'm working on a pretty large architectural survey, and I have a detailed video on the Embassy of Australia that I just can't find the time to finish, but I can't wait to finish it. For those of you who may be interested, most of my videos are not about pop culture or any of our geek stuff. I join these gentlemen and the rest of our community of chats, our fellowship of chats, to get my geek on. But normally I'm a historian and a lover of architecture and things like that. So that's what my channel's all about.
Wait till we hit Gettysburg then.
I can't wait. There's some films. Well, even this film, you know, I did make a few notes for my next trips into New York, to just remind myself of some of the places, you know, under the bridges, those shops, the pizza shop and all that. You know, I've never been under the bridges. I've walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, but so yeah, so that's what I'm up to when I'm not working my regular 9-to-5 job. And you'll find me in all of the usual chats in our fellowship and supporting all of you, everyone who has a channel and who is doing this. You make our, you know, for those of us who aren't creators, really, you make our days go by, and we can find that fellowship and that commonality in getting our geek and our nerd on during the day. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to Jay and to James. For all of your insights on this movie. I think it's so great to chat in an intelligent way. And I'm laughing because, you know, obviously we're highly intelligent, but, you know, just to have a really good talk about, you know, literature and film and sharing, you know, sharing those experiences. And I love hearing, you know, how we all react to these films. So thank you all very much. And I'm going to get to continuing reading The Great Escape for the next time around.
Yeah. Jay, Jay, you just gone over 500, haven't you? So
yes,
well.
We are at about 517, I think. So we're working on the watch hours next and all that. First, I just want to say again, having a great time doing this. This is so much fun. Want to second pretty much everything Sandy just said right there about, you know, how fun it is to just have these conversations, to nerd out over movies we love. You know, a big thank you to everybody who comes by this channel to watch this show, and that just supports people like myself, Stasis, in terms of the content we make regularly, as well as Tom B. Smooth, you know, the whole gang, Dealbreaker, everybody. You know, the support that we get from even just as much as being in chat, lurking, to actually chatting, leaving comments, the whole deal. It really does mean a lot. And just as much as Sandy just said, I'm constantly in my workday watching Stasis stream a survival game or Steel Leg play some Elden Ring or whatever it may be, Tom B, Smooth, the whole deal. So it gets me, even as somebody who's making my own content, watching everybody else gets me through my days too. So it's really fun to just be a part of this and chatting with everybody. Chatting with Stacy, Ben, Stacy, I did it again. Sandy and Stasis, I always combine. Chatting with Sandy and Yarnwich and Ben and Abe and Tim and everybody.
Only on the weekends
all day is always a blast.
Stacy is not going away for a long time.
It's the combination of the two names. I don't know. But again, thank you guys all so much for that. In terms of what I'm doing on my channel, honestly, just as always, it's flexible. I show up whenever somebody wants me on their stream. I'm always happy to join. Doing my own video game streams of some Batman lately, so we'll see when the next one of that is. Videos, I'm due for a couple, so you should be hopefully seeing some of those within the next few days.
Excellent. Yeah, both everybody. The links are in the description. Go and click. Give it a little sub and a couple of likes, as I always say. But things, yeah. Myself, I'm going to probably geek out on a couple of new games. Sandy knows what it is. Well, a planetarium was it planetarium? I say that's
Planetarias, I thought, because I was actually just Sandy mentioned it yesterday, and I was looking into
planetary. I think it's supposed to be like mercenaries. It's planetaries. Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
And it looks fun.
Yeah, and Dawn of the Defiance, kind of liking that. The mechanics of it is quite good. Going to do that. Need to crack on with some pre-recorded. I been a bit slack on some of the things, but been super busy. But I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. But yeah, I'm back on it soon. It's got and sometimes it's just damn hot to be in this room. Sometimes, fair enough. Yeah. But otherwise, from that, yeah, next Great Escape. Gonna look forward to it, everybody. It's yeah.
It's a song. Every time I hear Great Escape, that song won't get out of my head. I love the song.
And yeah, anybody wants to geek out, kind of learn about the real history of it as well, because it is very.
Yes.
I think it's based, but loosely based. But yeah, I think it was in a different area, but it was. It's there. It is quite interesting. But yeah, everybody, there's your homework. A little bit. You don't have to read the book. That's Sandy's homework.
But you should read the book. Don't discourage them.
I'll tell you, Sandy's glowing review of No Country for Old Men, the book, has actually got me to start reading it. So you never know. Okay. You might get a few people to start reading as well.
But yeah, everybody, I hope you've had a lot of fun today. We're going to do Great Escape.
So just a little heads up on Great Escape for everybody in chat, and actually Stasis, I don't think I mentioned this to you yet, but I have to Sandy. I will be away on my honeymoon next weekend, so we might have to coordinate that one for maybe 2 weeks from today.
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
we can figure that out backstage and all that.
Yeah,
just want to give the viewers a chance to know too.
There we go. Cool. Excellent. So yeah, we're not. Yeah, it isn't weekly. We're gonna relax, especially with the readings and stuff like that. So we're just gonna have some fun with it and see how it goes. But yeah, everybody, hope you enjoyed. And I'm guessing that's it. There we go.
Yep.
I think this is our shortest. Look, we did just under 3 hours. I'm kind of wondering.
Not bad. We're breaking records.
Just under I think when we first started this, I think we were thinking maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we started with 3 hours, then 4 hours, then almost 3 hours. Yeah. This feels short, but wow. Great conversation.
But yeah, everybody have a great rest of your evening, your afternoon, or whatever you're doing. And we'll see you in the next film club. Have a good one, everyone. All right, bye.
Take care.